guys, what's up? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/eggs show. That's EGGSSHOW. Audible has more than 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or just about any device you can imagine. As Eggs listeners, you can download a free audiobook today by visiting audibletrial.com/eggs show.
Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, one star. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. This is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. Cars broke down, I missed the bus that runs at 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right on the jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just the perfect day. It's just the perfect day. No, 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 no,
Hey everybody, welcome to a exciting and special edition of Eggs. Today, we're proud to announce the 2018 Eggies. So, the Eggies are basically our way of kind of going back over the year. We've had a lot of amazing guests on in this last year, and we want to, pay a little homage to some of the best of folks. And then, of course, masked by all this is the fact that it's the holidays and we're all out of the office. So we wanted to put something together so that we can go on vacation.
So we can take a week off, pretty much.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing.
Yeah.
So part of this is vacation, but part of it is being really grateful to the people who've shared their time and their expertise and their story with this show over the last year. This time of year, I think most of us get a little reminiscent and start thinking about the year and how things went. And as far as the show's gone, it's been epic for us,
Yeah,
I mean,
it really has.
Year one was something, and it was quite the accomplishment. But here we are at the end of 2018, basically 80 some episodes through, or in the can, and it's a pretty proud moment. I mean, for me and Mike, I don't know that we ever really foresaw it going this far, and it sounds like we're on the verge of some really exciting stuff in 19.
Yeah, I actually, I was... When we started this off, I was like, we might make it to 30. And here we are in the 80s, and, so much has happened this year, too. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and if you don't stop and think about it, to hear a number like 80 doesn't sound like a lot. When you listen to the Adam Carolla's with more than 2,000 shows, or the guys like the Rogans with, 1,500 shows, or wherever they're at nowadays. 80 or 85 doesn't seem like a lot, but what that is, for us, because we just do a weekly show, that's 85 weeks in a row that we've produced a show, which, it's only a year and some change, year and a half, but that's still pretty epic, especially, when we say that number to other podcasters, they go, oh my God, because they're all new or they're just getting a show going and stuff like that. It's,
I look back at the guys that have one or two and I laugh.
Yeah,
you don't know what you're in for.
That's right. Well, and and at some point we really ought to kill our first few episodes, but we still leave them up as an homage to sort of where we've come from, because where we came from was not great. This show began life as kind of a creativity podcast, where the idea was that, Mike and I are creative guys. I work in advertising. Hey, what if we grab some, marketing ideas and just sort of study up and espouse our knowledge and, tell everyone how smart we are. And, it made for, I guess, podcasts that were...
I don't think we knew what we wanted to do.
Yeah, well, that was it. The podcast hadn't really taken form yet. We were still just our own little egg, an embryo.
Yay.
So, but we weren't quite to breakfast yet. And so we're getting there. And even now, the show continues to evolve and change. And honestly, it gets better. Some of the big things that came up this year, I mean, the guests that we had on were stellar, and each guest is,
Well, we
amazing and experts in their field. We're getting really talented people, really bright people who have really great points of view and interesting stories, and I couldn't be more happy with our guests.
Yeah, I love the fact that we just kind of, if I want to learn something or you want to learn something, look for someone in the industry and hit them up and say, hey, jump on the podcast. And
Yeah, I'm looking at you, Nick Baker.
Right.
So
Hashtag.
hashtag I don't know, hashtag Nick Baker. I don't know, look him up. He's a industrial designer out in Brooklyn. I love him.
Well, he does the 3D stuff that you're getting into.
Yep. Yeah, he's an industrial designer, and I won't get too deep into this stuff, but anyway, I had some interest in doing that same stuff. He was one of the first I came across on Instagram whose work I really enjoyed, and so have recently started a conversation with him. He has a podcast worthy of checking out as well. If I could remember what it was called, I'd share it with you. But I will get it for you. Minor Details.
Coming soon.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's the Minor Details podcast. So jump over there, check them out. Anyways, hopefully we'll get Nick this year.
It's been a fun year, and we as a way of kind of saying thank you to everyone that made the time. I mean, coming on a show like this is kind of, it's not easy to do. Like, especially if they're remote, they got to set up, they got to figure out the audio, they got to spend an hour of their time with us, and it's not the easiest thing in the world, and so
it's work. Yeah, I mean, for whoever it is, it's work for us. But
and then the people that actually come into studio or come and meet with us, for a little while there, we were going to them, and now they're actually coming to us, which is different, but good.
Yeah, no, it's really amazing, and like Mike said, I mean, we just couldn't be more grateful for it. I mean, the amount of work that goes into these things in terms of preparation and everything else on our end is something, but these people are doing it. I mean, we aren't Joe Rogan, we aren't Adam Carolla,
and it's not like we're writing them a check for their time,
right?
Either,
I mean, these people, and we've had some very high-powered people on that get lots of money for each hour of their day, and they're willing to give it to us for free just to give back to the community, be a part of the podcasting world, or to just spread their message around. And so it really is a big commitment, even though people don't think about that way. So we're really grateful for that.
So we're going to offer them a Eggy Award for the best of show in a few different categories.
Yep. Basically, we want to kind of tip our cap to, we've got 10 awards, and we want to sort of, give each of these 10 sort of a little bit of acknowledgement for the contribution they made to Eggs this year. This by no means cuts out anybody else who appeared on the show this year. I mean, it was really difficult to whittle it down to this group of people. But I think we have a nice range and a nice, spread of things. But for us, everybody's a winner.
Yes.
And in this society, everybody should get a trophy. But that won't be the case because we can't afford that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it really needed to stick to a balance.
Everyone else gets a sticker.
That's right. Maybe
Good
a sticker.
job.
Even stickers are kind of expensive. We might have to get gold stars or something. So anyway, but before we get into the actual award shows and into the categories, I want to just talk about some of the highlights of this year. Because as Mike mentioned, this year brought some changes with it, including some travel, like taking the show itself on the road. Mike and I in the past had done shows remotely where he and I were in different places, but we did make a run out of state this year to go, and we actually took the show with us to go do some interviews. So that was pretty exciting. That was kind of a cool milestone.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Maybe one of the biggest things this year, the biggest changes for us, is that of a permanent studio.
Yeah.
We in the past had worked out of a house, out of a hotel,
out of a swimming pool.
Yeah, I mean, out of the pool house. I mean, for people who've been paying any attention to the show, I mean, there was the Studio 6 days. There was when we were recording out at the Motel 6.
Yeah. That was a little dude walking into the scumbag Motel 6 that we used.
Yeah, this one was pretty rough.
It was pretty rough. And then hauling expensive equipment into this room. It looked like we were setting up for some.
We were gonna go shoot a dirty movie or something. Because it was pretty funny. I mean, me and Mike going into a room with a bunch of black cases of equipment, undisclosed equipment. So anyway, we've come a little ways since then. But I mean, from my living room to the pool house to Mike's studio back home in Pocatello, and everywhere. The fact that we were able to open the studio here, and for anyone who hasn't heard us talking about it, it's called Access Studios. It's inside Access Salt Lake, which is a co-working and event space in Salt Lake City. We're in the basement there. It's called the garden level, which is odd because you can't see a garden. There's not a window in sight.
I say we get a flower pot and just
something.
start
We
growing
need to really
something
make the
just to
garden
make
level.
it the garden
Yeah, 'cause
level.
it just doesn't make any sense. But anyway, down in our little hovel, we have this awesome studio that's set up, specifically for podcasting, but really all things audio books, voiceover, etc. And Mr. Mike here is our engineer, and we do not only our show, but now we're beginning to get a little traction, and we're doing a number of other shows as well.
It's kind of neat. We had someone reach out to us just yesterday from Google, just randomly found it.
We're being found online and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. So we're starting to branch out what we're doing and having this permanent location. Not only is it cool that we can contribute to the podcasting sphere or ecosystem by having the studio available to podcasters and people who may not otherwise get into it because it's difficult or time consuming. Now they have a turnkey solution here. It's great for eggs. It is also, in addition to just having this physical place, it's given us, or because of having this physical place, it's given us the opportunity to start doing other things too. So
video.
Yeah, so video is a big thing we introduced this year. And really, at this point, at the time we're recording this, we've only done 6 or 7 of them, maybe.
Yeah, maybe at the most.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it could be 5. I'm not sure. And that is kind of a new thing for us. We're just breaking ground on video, figuring out how to rig cameras and switch them, and
figuring out that I need to
stream
dress up
and do all that
now
stuff. Yeah, Mike has to stop slumming it, suck in that gut a little
Damn
bit.
it.
But anyway, that's been a new cool element brought to the show, and we've managed to do that remotely and locally, and it sort of just puts us on yet one more channel. We've been streaming live to YouTube, and folks can actually interact with the show as it's happening. They can send chat requests or send in questions, things like that, and it's a really cool situation for us. And that wouldn't really happen without having the studio. I mean, the setup is just kind of overwhelming. So without having a physical location to be in, it would be difficult to facilitate all that. So anyway, that's a really cool thing that happened this year.
Yeah, I'm super excited for where it's going to go in the future too.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It sounds like we have some exciting things on the horizon. Can't get into it yet, but we'll talk about it as soon as we can, and it'll be awesome. So look forward to an exciting 2019. So without any further ado, let's just get into this thing, huh?
Yeah.
So here's what we did. And Mike, sorry, I'm talking a lot, so cut me off if you
you're
feel
fine.
like it.
No.
So basically what we've done is we sort of went back, we looked at this year's shows, and it's funny when I look at some of these guests, because they were really early in the year, in January, February, and stuff like that. So it feels like it was eons ago. It doesn't feel like it was just earlier this year.
Yeah.
But we've got a lot of these guests, and I just looking at even this list of 10, I mean, I'm so thrilled for the people that have been on this program. It's just been really great.
Pretty neat.
And to think that there's actually 52 guests, or approximately 50 guests a year that we hit, because, basically one a week for 50 some weeks. And so, there's a few best ofs and stuff throughout the year.
Had
but
a couple clip shows.
Yeah,
and
but
stuff.
largely, 45 to 50 guests or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. And to be able to whittle it down to these 10 is really something we were excited to do, but as we mentioned before, it doesn't take anything away from other people. So without any further ado, let's get into our first category, or first award. We had the opportunity to reconnect with some really old friends, people who we hadn't seen in, almost a decade, I think we decided. They are basically founding members of a band called Vaden. They had gone by some other names in the past. They were called Simplify.
At one point.
They were Phoenix, Arizona based. Basically, Mike knew them and made the introduction to me, so I came along a little later. But Vaden was a band that, both Mike and I enjoyed a lot. We really liked the guys in the band. We did a lot of work with them down in Arizona back in the olden days when Mike and I were producing concerts down there. And we had the opportunity, just by complete happenstance, one of the members, their former bass player, I think, right? Bill was bass.
Bill was bass.
And so their former bass player, Bill Del Rio.
Yep.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Happens to live sort of near us here in Salt Lake City.
About a half hour south
just
of
outside
us.
of Salt Lake. And then their singer, Curtis Casey, lives out in California. But Bill married Curtis's sister. And
who was one of the stage managers.
right, who we also
had
knew
a
from
lot-
back in the day. And obviously they stayed close and everything like that. And so just moons aligned, and Mike had been talking to Curtis and was able to make a, sort of reunion happen.
Yeah. Essentially, Curtis came to town to visit his sister and Bill, and posted something on Instagram or something. Saw he was in town. Was like, hey, we're in Salt Lake. You should come by. And they were able to swing by. And this was actually at Access before we had the studio set up. We set up in a conference room.
Yeah, we had rented a conference room here and just rigged up a couple mics and stuff.
And it probably led into why we're here.
Yeah, it was, definitely one of the stepping stones to making this deal happen was them seeing us actually using the space to record from. So that was great. So anyway, we want to share with you just a little clip from that show. And basically, we're giving them the Eggy Award for sort of the longest reunion.
Yeah, because it's been 10 years.
Yeah,
10
there's
plus
probably
years.
a better way of saying it than longest reunion. I don't know. Maybe we can be a little more clever about that. But nonetheless, this show was basically the longest one in the making. This was a group of people that we'd been interested in for literally more than a decade. And from the inception of this show, had talked about reconnecting with them, and it was finally made to happen after 10 years.
Yep.
So without any further ado, the longest reunion, or the Eggy Award winner of the longest reunion, get members from Baden, or members of the band Baden, Curtis Casey and Bill Bogan.
And the funny thing is, I've gone around and seen Budweiser in different spots do like true underground music.
Do they still do that?
In different places, but what they had before was true music, and it was us who pitched them true underground music.
Oh, so they've used True Underground
And so
since
I've
then?
seen them do the true underground since then, and I'm like, we started that, I think, in Phoenix a very long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see across the top here, Vaden
Yeah.
Productions.
And Budweiser True
it's you
Music
guys.
present true underground music.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was, so Bruce had a friend that worked at Hensley, and she's like, hey,
The black guy?
no, that was Willie. He
that
was
was
the
Will-
decision maker.
okay.
He was definitely DM, him
Yeah.
and this guy named Tad. But his friend was like some hot girl, like always.
Eleni.
Eleni, that's right.
I know that because we named our daughter.
Hot girl, I got this for you.
Yeah, Bill remembers hot girl.
Well, it's because my daughter's name is Eleni. We always thought, my wife and I were like, oh, that's a cool name.
Yeah.
That's your old Simplify logo.
There it is.
So-
Oh, and there's the Muhammad Ali that you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
And so I remember him saying, hey, my friend works at Hensley. They sponsor. They do some band sponsorships. Let's go take and this is, something that all bands should definitely know about is like just sponsors.
Reach out
and
to your
reaching
local
out to your
vendors.
local bottling companies and all that stuff because they're already printing so much. They have so much
Well,
printing power.
That was the thing that was so cool. I think if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, they used to give like $1,000 for radio.
Mm-hmm.
They used to provide all your backdrops, so all the big banners that you would print and all the flyers and all the posters.
Yeah.
So talk about a huge expense just covered just by having them as a
gone.
sponsor.
Yeah, that was it. And I remember making the pitch for them because he's like, let's go in. And they were like, we only do big bands. We're a big brand. We do big rock and roll. We have true music. But so we had to go in and tell them, well, there's an underground scene you should know about too, and it's like this cool thing where there's a bunch of local bands that get together at these spots like the Clubhouse or the Big Fish Pub and all that stuff.
Oh man, I forgot. Yeah.
And like, you should pay attention to these brands too. I mean, to these brands as well. It's an underground scene. And so we pitched them underground. And I remember staying up with my sister and you all night and making this big portfolio to bring to them. And we did the whole war room thing where the rock and roll band shows up to their, big table, big corporate table in Hensley. And this is like, like the McCains and all that stuff. And these people are doing it. And we showed them what we were doing. We showed them our idea. We just wanted to do like 6 shows. And for us, it was a big amount of money, because we're like, they did the 1,000, they did radio ads, they did all the print. It came out to like, I don't know, $15,000 at the end when we hit them up for it. And it took 15 minutes. We did the pitch. And the guy just like, yep, give them anything they want, just yeah.
All
just
right.
The
30?
answer is yes. Like, we should have asked for more. And his name was Tad.
Famous last word.
But I remember I felt like you were such an integral part of that because you did bring the lights. You made it look so professional, so legit. And the first time that they came, they only came to the first show to make sure we were actually doing what we said we were going to do. And we packed the clubhouse. I mean, people were just standing outside.
And that was the one that I felt the worst about doing the lighting for, like, because
Yeah.
I honestly had never done lighting for a band before.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, I had that truss over your head, and it was just kind of in a bad. I figured out later to do it differently, and we got it right. But
Right.
that first one was a learning curve for me.
Dude, that was such a
Learning
thing.
experiences.
But they came to the first show, saw it was sold out and packed to the hilt, and all the the Budweiser logo was everywhere, and they're like, "Yeah, we're so glad we did that." And two things: one, it made me realize how pro you were with what you were, and all I ever look for with anyone I work with is just somebody who says what they're going to do and then does what they're going to say. It's like
That's
Yeah.
key, isn't
Show
it?
up on time.
show up on time,
Be
and
there, and-
even when we're working with bands, like, dude, show up on time, hit your set, and then be nice and pack up.
Yeah.
And then get to go on to the next spot. But what do you call it? Oh, and it also made me think of how much of a purist Rob was, because he would not drink Budweiser.
Oh, really?
all,
Even though they're
all they
sponsored.
asked us to do was like put a Budweiser on our amps, or like, you don't have to drink it, but just be seen with it in your hands. And he's like, "I'm sorry, this beer is horrible. I'm not going to do that."
No offense, Budweiser. We need sponsors.
No offense, Budweiser. That was one guitarist.
I
thing,
love
you
a
know.
nice, crisp Bud Light.
Bud Light's totally different. That's something you drink with your friends, right?
Totally.
Hashtag Budweiser.
Okay, so we're at the True Underground time frame right now.
Mhm.
Shortly after that, you go and go into studio with Ryan Green.
Mhm.
And for those of you who don't know who Ryan Green is without Google, can you break that down for him? How big of a deal that is?
So Ryan Green, he's one of the dudes, man. He's like definitely one of the influencers of a lot of the sounds that we grew up with.
And didn't he do like MXPX?
No
Punk and Dra-
Effects,
No Effects.
No Effects, Punk and Job, like he did Lagwagon. He's worked with everyone from.
I think he had the opportunity to do Jagged Little Pill with Alanis Morissette,
that was
but he
one
had
of his.
and he didn't because he
Did the No Effects
Yeah.
thing. He's like, well, No Effects is paying me, and Jagged Little Pill just wants to pay me in
Royalties.
yeah.
and in
Points on the
hindsight
record.
2020.
Yeah,
you know?
hindsight
He could
2020.
he could have retired off that album.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's one of
Yeah.
those hindsight 2020 things. But just
Fat Records.
Yeah,
Fat Records.
Fat Records. Yeah.
That was his thing.
And one thing that he's known for is his drum sound, right?
His drum sounds are amazing.
Because isn't he a drummer himself?
He started out as a drummer, and then he was an engineer for EMI for a long time. He was their head engineer, and so he just knew. And I remember when I first met you, Bill, you said, what separates a bad recording from a good recording is the drum sounds. Like, if you can get the drum sounds good, then you're gonna have a good recording.
Yeah, this was back in the day when you couldn't do just like put your iPhone out and do some crazy cool digital stuff. You had to do like I'm from the days of the 8-tracks, man.
With the tape.
With
yeah.
the tape and
Did you
getting
guys-
a drum sound?
Is
dude.
Children of Our is it Mistakes?
Yep, Children Are Mistakes.
Was that recorded on tape?
No, that was all
was all
digital.
digital. Okay.
That's all digital. So with Ryan Green, it started making sense as you start doing your band and all that stuff, that anything that happens, you're going to be the one that makes it happen. Making it is just making it. Like, call it out, go after it, and do it.
Eggs.
Eggs. Like, straight up, the True Underground happened because we wanted it to happen. Like I said, we treated it like a business and stuff. And it came at a point where we were changing our name because, well, the reason why the story of Vaden, right? Why we changed it to Vaden. First time I ever met Bruce, Vaden was still alive, his son. And I was like, man, I love that name. What does it mean? And he's like, it means knowledgeable in some Hindu dialect. And so I was like, wow, that's cool. And we're still looking for band names. I'm like, I want to call this band Vaden. And he's like, nah, it's my son's name. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, bro. It's a killer name. It's like, we're going to end up calling ourselves Simplify without an I because we didn't get the domain. And so when that whole thing happened and, that tragedy happened with him and his mother, that's when the word knowledgeable, like to know the ledge, really clicked to me. Like, you got to know the ledge of life and what importance is. And that's when it was like I went back to him one evening after he decided, yeah, we'll come back to the band, because you take the time off, and it's like,
yeah.
And then I was like, what do you think, man? Do you think we can change the name to Vaden? And he's like, you know what? I was wondering if you were going to ask that, and I thought about it, and yeah, that would be something I could see doing. And the whole mission, and I think you're only ever as good as your purpose is.
Yeah.
Like you can only ever master something as good as what your purpose for mastering that is. And that's not mine. That's like some internet video I saw about that. And our purpose was just to kind of go out there and be like, nothing's promised, people. Come on. Nothing's promised. You got to go out there and just get it and live your life.
Yeah.
All right. So up next.
Yeah, up next is an interesting one. So it's another guy who actually I guess you have to blame or to be grateful for having this show in the first place. The guy I'm talking about is Jason Frostholm. He is the host of Creative South podcast. Jason was basically, Creative South was the first podcast I ever appeared on. And if you go back to the early stages of the Eggs show, somewhere around episode 9 or 10 or something, you notice we start talking about the Creative South event.
And then talk about it for 10 shows in a row.
Then we talk about it for about 10 shows in a row, and we have several guests on, people that I'd met from out in that at that event. Well, one of those people was Jason Frostholm. And throughout the course of the event out in Cleveland, he was running around and interviewing people from his backpack. He had a little Zoom recorder and a couple mics, and he would just do these little impromptu interviews with people from all over for content for the Creative South show. And I was basically the last guest he sat with before he left. He literally came to everybody I tell this to, so it acts creeped out. I don't get why this is a weird thing. But anyway, he came to my hotel room at like midnight. And so, but anyway, so Jason shows up at my hotel room. We break out the mics and we go on for about an hour. He gave me the opportunity to talk about my business and the work we do in Spain and the importance of relationships and all the things I've come to discover over the last few years. And it sort of kicked things off. Like it got kind of juices flowing about, well, wait a minute, maybe we could do something like that. And
well, I think we had actually been talking about a show before that.
Yeah.
And we just never pulled the trigger.
Well, and that was the thing. I think what it was when I saw Jason's setup, just literally this little recorder and mic, I went, oh, okay, well, I could do that. Like, that's easy. I'll just put that in my head and I got it. And I actually did buy a little Tascam recorder, kind of like the Zoom, and I got a couple mics, and the idea was that we would just use that setup. But of course, my dear pal Mike here would never let that happen as an audio engineer, and he was not impressed.
I think before we even started the first show, I bought a mic, one of these Shure SM7Bs, and they're like $500-$600 mics, and so it was a pretty big investment for not even doing one show yet.
Yeah.
And I think by the third or fourth episode, we had the second one. So.
Yeah, it was something else. So anyway, what we decided to do, I mean, basically, it took us more than a year, about a year, to facilitate a meeting with Jason and connect online. And what we decided to do was what we called a co-show. Basically, we created an episode of the podcast where we basically interviewed each other in the same recording. So we interviewed Jason asked us questions, and vice versa. And then we published the same show on both networks. So we published it not only on the Eggs Network, but we also published it on his Creative South podcast.
Yeah, it was actually kind of weird to get interviewed.
Yeah, it was kind of an odd thing.
I'm used to like asking the questions.
Well, yeah, by that point we had been doing interviews for some time, and it was kind of a new experience for someone to be asking us questions for a change. And but Jason's a really great guy. In the Creative Podcast or Creative South podcast is still one of my favorites. Met a lot of great people at that event and through their group and through the people they've introduced us to. We've actually had a number of other guests on this show that were introduced to us by Jason. And so he's been really integral to the early success of this show, and really for sort of giving us the impetus to turn the corner and get started doing it.
Word.
Yeah, I might be using it wrong, but nonetheless, without any ado further, I'd like to introduce the Eggy for the best collaboration. So, best collaboration goes to Jason Frostholm over at the Creative South podcast. Woohoo! So check out this little clip from that show.
How is it working, like as a creative in an analytical world? Engineers, I mean, they're pretty straightforward. It's, it has to be like this. And then, being creative and actually, I guess it's two different things, but,
yeah. It's challenging. It's taught me a lot about pitching stuff. Because I'm trying to find a way to say it where it doesn't sound like I'm talking bad about engineers. In case anyone
where you don't
works,
lose your job.
Yeah, exactly. Where I don't lose my job.
Where it's different parts of the brain, though, so it makes sense.
Yeah, it's different parts of the brain. So engineers, while they can envision how a structure is going to go together or how these schematics are going to work and come to create something, which isn't something that I can do. I look at the stuff and it's like, that's just a bunch of lines and numbers overlapping each other. I have no idea what the hell that means. But on the opposite side of that, when I'm, taking an ad to them or taking logo design or something like that to them, they can't necessarily visualize the use cases of how it would be used across different platforms and how things like that. So I've got to be very good at internally pitching things to those clients. So I've got to explain it a lot. I've got to show examples of things mocked up. So it's gotten me pretty decent at pitching things.
Yeah, well, and that's, in advertising or any, sort of creative field, that's a huge thing to be good at.
Yeah.
So, because I know for a lot of people that doesn't come easy. A lot of the creatives I know, myself included, are just, pitching and doing that sort of work isn't really our forte. So.
Oh, it's my least favorite part of the job. I will say that. Well, it's not my least favorite part of the job. My least favorite part of the job is doing budgets, but
yeah.
But after that, it's my least favorite part of the job because I get sweaty palms every time beforehand, and get worked up and frustrated, and I'm just worried that they're not going to grasp it or I'm not going to explain it well, and sometimes that happens, and more often than not, it doesn't now after having been there for so long, but. It does happen.
Yeah. Okay. So from there, now I know you as from the Creative South podcast. That's how I met you, or the context I met you in. But so how does all that work? Like, what's your relationship with Creative South? Why is there a podcast? Like, how did that come to be? That sort of thing. We have talked in the last few episodes of our show about the Creative South conference that's coming up. Because we plan to attend unless we procrastinate too much longer. But
don't procrastinate much longer. There's still plenty of tickets left, so go out and get yours.
So, but it is our grand plan to attend.
The reason I say don't procrastinate is because hotels will sell out before tickets will sell out. But from what I understand, there's some decent Airbnbs right in the downtown area. So.
Yeah, I was looking a little bit. I actually needed to get into the Creative South website and do some looking just to see where the venues were. So, because I was looking at Airbnb yesterday and trying to find a spot, because we were actually thinking, and we were going to try and maybe bring the show on the road and meet some people.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so we were thinking about trying to find an Airbnb.
We'll talk about something about that afterwards too.
Perfect. Cool. So anyway, yeah. Tell me about how you got involved with Creative South, the organization, I guess, and then when the podcast came about and how that happened.
Sure. So my first year, my wife and I actually won tickets to our first Creative South back in 2014. And I've told this story a bunch before, and I realize your listeners may not have heard it, but I'll give the short story. Peter Del Tondo, who's on staff with it, was giving away tickets through a side project of his, and I had learned about Creative South maybe 2 weeks before that he was giving out the tickets, because there's another kind of webcast called Design Recharge with Diane Gibbs.
I was listening to her podcast with you earlier today to gather some information on you.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Yeah, and she lives like 15 minutes away from me. So I was, watching that. I learned about Creative South, and then like 2 weeks later, Peter's on there and he's talking about that he's giving away tickets. So just on a lark, not thinking that I'd win, because I never win anything, put in for it. And technically, I was not the first winner. I was like the fourth winner. But the first four people that he called, because it was such short notice, couldn't get off work or couldn't arrange anything to be able to get up to Columbus and go to the conference. So thank you for all of those people who couldn't make it. I'm sorry that you weren't able to, but I'm really happy that you weren't able to as well.
Well, so you have them to blame for the podcast.
I do. So yeah, so the first year my wife and I went up there, we weren't even able to get up there for the full conference. Like we got up there the Friday that it started and had to leave midway through the Saturday that it ended. So we missed the kickoff party that's every Thursday night, and we missed kind of the wrap up because it was such short notice. We were like scrambling to get, in-laws and my parents and all to watch the kids and, find a hotel room and all of that stuff. And it ended up working out. And I'm so grateful that it did. But the first year that we went, Tina, that's my wife, she and I were kind of wallflowers, and the only people that we knew were Diane, who at that point, even though I lived 15 minutes away from her, I had never actually met her in person at that point. And I'd been interacting with her on social media for probably at least a year at that point. And then Peter, who we won the tickets from. And then I had seen Mike on his episode, so I knew what he looked like.
Uh-huh.
So we got up there where, we had fun. We were still kind of wallflowers. And as we were leaving, like to head home, I ran into Mike in the hallway and I just, stopped him and thanked him. And, Mike's a big guy. Mike's 6'4", 300 pounds.
Well, he's the one that greets you on the website when you log in to get tickets.
Yep, that's Mike. And he's a hugger. And, I mean, I'm a hugger too, but he's not always aware of his size.
Well, yeah, no, funny Mike story. So now I don't know him at all, right? And and I was on Creative South's website. It was right before tickets went on sale, and that little thing popped up in the corner, and it's an automated thing that pops up, and it's a way of contacting them, and so it pops up, and it's got a little thumbnail of Mike's image, right? And he's got a beard and a hat on, kind of a rugged looking dude. And so this thing pops up and it says, hey, can I help you or whatever? And, I was just being a smartass like I tend to be. And so I replied to it. I was like, no, you're scary looking. I don't want to talk to you or something like that. Well, moments later, I get a thing from him saying, oh, hey, no, I'm not scary. I promise.
No, he's a big teddy bear.
Yeah. And so anyway, I got talking to him about Creative South tickets. But yes, even from afar and via thumbnail, I was frightened of Mike. So
yeah.
All right. Up next, we got Ian Paget.
Yeah, for people don't remember Ian, he is the founder of logogeek.uk. He's also a podcaster, active logo advocate.
He specializes in logo. That's his forte.
Yeah, he's a real expert, and it was a real interesting conversation. As we were talking about previously with Jason Frostholm, Ian is a guy who was basically offered to us or introduced to us by Jason Frostholm. And he had been a guest at the Creative South event that they hold in Columbus, Georgia.
He was a guest speaker?
Yeah, he had come to speak.
Oh, that's cool.
So Ian is UK-based, as was apparent by his URL. And he's just from a little suburb there in outside of London someplace. I don't know my
I can't
UK
remember.
very well.
And I'm yawning. I'm sorry.
Ugh. So unprofessional.
I know.
After all this time, he hasn't figured it out. So anyway, Ian, really interesting guy. I guess he's a Manchester, UK-based guy. And his company is basically offering expert logo design to entrepreneurs, startup businesses, people like that, anyone who needs a new identity, basically. And then he also has authored a blog that is wildly popular in sort of the logo sphere and runs a really active social media community all by the same name. So really interesting guy. And the reason we've got him on the show this time, not only was he a great guest, but he was the furthest distance guy to call in.
Yeah, literally around the world.
Yep, literally from the other side of the planet, and basically the furthest guest.
Well, other than you, is Spain further?
Yeah, Spain. Well, where I was in Spain was probably further.
So change of pace. Ian, you're out. Ryan, you won.
Yes. No, but anyway, so it's kind of interesting because this was one of our early forays into long distance call-ins. We had done a few with some different platforms and things like that, but this was the furthest away. There were some technical challenges to make it happen. Scheduling for one. I mean, we were 8 hours apart, or 7 hours apart.
Didn't we flub the first one?
Yeah, we
Or
may have
was
blown that the first time. There was a number of things around it. And so Ian, as I mentioned, not only was a great guest, I mean, I don't want to cheapen his appearance to just that he called in from a long ways away, but his Eggy Award is for the longest distance calling. One of the things that, it was one of the big subjects that you guys went over was bidding and pricing. And it's a little bit of a, business inside kind of stuff. And it's pretty focused to, people who might be working in a creative trade. But I still wanted to ask you, so in addition to what you've learned along the way, plus an amalgamation of things you may have learned from Chris, can you talk about the process of bidding work and the art of negotiation? And the only reason I ask is just I know that when you were a little more green, as I was, and new to this business, I know that pricing is a struggle. This is one of the most common questions I get as somebody who works in this field. And I've read books, I've read all this stuff, and the advice that Chris was giving, I felt was some of the best I'd heard.
Yeah,
I was actually very pleasantly surprised by that, and that sort of motivated me to ask you, even though it's maybe a little bit off the pace of the interview here.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because Chris is obviously far better at this than I am, and there's no way that I can actually say everything that he said.
Sure,
but,
and of course, go back and listen to it. I think it's episode 1 of your podcast.
Yeah. After interviewing him and David Airy, I actually made a few changes to how I do mine. So how I've always done mine, and I haven't changed it drastically since that conversation, but I'm quite lucky that my website's doing really well on Google, and I get a load of inbound inquiries come in. So people just find my website, they like my work, and they just get in touch, and they're like, how much is the logo? When I first started out, like I mentioned earlier on, some of those prices were just, we're just talking like £100, which is not enough money. It's fine as a hobby, which it was at that time, but as an actual salary, it doesn't pay the bills. Realistically, for a logo project, you need at least like 2-3 solid days to be working on this. So you need to be bringing in, £500, £1,000, $1,000 up basically, which is a lot of money.
Sure.
So at the time of speaking with Chris and David, both of them, we spoke about prices. I was always bidding the same price. I was always bidding, quoting like, £500-600. This year I've been experimenting, and I've actually been increasing those prices. And you know what? People still say yes. And I've learned it's a mindset thing. Like literally, if you think that your price is £10,000 versus £500, if you're quoting £10,000 and enough people ask you, eventually someone's going to say yes. I think another thing that I also learned from doing the podcast is with logos in particular, there are certain companies who want to spend a lot of money, and if the price is below a certain price, they're not even going to consider you because they're not going to take you seriously. So there are some companies out there who, if you quote like £800, they're not going to go with you just because you're too cheap. You have to charge them a couple of grand because that's how much they're expecting to pay, and that's how much they want. They value their identity.
Well, and that's the thing is that's a really scary step for especially young designers and things to take is, because it requires a little bit of self-confidence and maybe even a little bloat. Because you have to sort of hype it up a little bit because most designers I know are fairly humble folk and they aren't going to think of themselves like, oh, I'm this amazing logo developer or whatever, and so to ask for a lot of money is a difficult thing, and a lot of people have a hard time with talking money in general. And so I would definitely encourage people to go and listen to this podcast. Chris had a really smart perspective on it.
Yeah, I'm still struggling a little bit myself, but I think, that each time I do increase it, it feels more comfortable. Like now, on average, I'm getting between £800 and £1,000, which is probably like $1,000 to $1,500.
Maybe $1,000 to $1,200, something.
Yeah, something like that. And now I'm charging that. Those, the £400 or £500 projects that I used to do, it's not enough money. It's not worth it, and I just feel like that's too small projects. It's funny how your mindset changes on these things, and like you said, it's a confidence thing. Just becoming confident.
One thing that I found is I'm in a completely different field. I'm in the audio and DJ entertainment field, and my clients, you have the $200 up to $3,000, on average, kind of. And I found that, if I charge, that $2,000 mark or in that price range, my calendar isn't as busy, but I'm getting the same income that I was making before without pulling my hair out. And it's just great for me just because I can do other things. I don't have to do 300 gigs a year to get by.
Yeah. I think another thing that I've really learned from as well, building the community. I started doing that. Well, it started growing shortly after I pushed those podcasts out, and actually being in a community of other people and being able to talk about money. You see people's work that are charging like $1,000, $2,000, $10,000, and you look and think, that's not actually any better than what I'm doing. And it kind of, it makes you start questioning, like, I'm really not charging enough. You see people younger than you charging 3 times as much as you, and I, like, in some instances, like, I know more than them, and I know that I can talk with clients better than them. I've got more experience than them. So being in a community, it helps.
Yeah, well, and to your point about, some clients just need to spend the money. You're not going to be a designer working for $25 an hour and working for Pepsi, for example, or some of these huge corporations. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of perspective, right? They know that the $25 an hour guy is not as good as the $100 an hour guy. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe in reality they are, but it's, a car is a car, but you would rather have that Mercedes than that, I don't know, that Geo Metro. Okay, everybody, this next guest, or next guests, is my dear friends, the Mix Mob. So Mix Mob is a band from sunny San Diego who have since broken up years ago. I used to tour manage them back when I was a youngling. And the band later came together again for a little bit of a reunion tour, which presented an opportunity for me to reconnect with some of these old guys. I'd stayed in touch with them, but everybody drifts apart after time, and Mix Mob was kind of the glue that held us all together for a long time. And then when the band went away, everybody kind of went their different directions. And so the reunion shows were a great opportunity to bring everyone back together. And we just got lucky enough that they happened to do a reunion show here in Salt Lake City.
Yep. So, actually, they were doing a birthday party for Ian.
Yeah, Ian G., earlier podcast guest. And I actually don't remember the episode he's on either, pretty early in the day.
Yeah, he was one of our first interviews.
Yeah, he may have been the previous year. Yeah, around episode 21. The Notorious Ian G is the name of the episode. And anyway, it was Ian's birthday, and so the Mix Mob guys had come together and decided to do a show here in Salt Lake City, which was always a great market for them and for us when we played it many years ago.
Well, the crazy part was there were literally people that were driving from San Diego here to see the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was pretty cool. And these guys had done one other reunion show down in San Diego that was widely attended, and I was supposed to go, but I was in San Diego. If you refer to some really early Eggs episodes, you can hear me bitching because I was in Spain.
Yep.
And unable to attend the show, so I was really bummed about that. But this opportunity was great. And so the reason we are involving them, or the award they're winning, is for most people interviewed at once.
How many? We had like 6.
We had at least 6 or 7 mics going, and basically, we had 3 or 4 band members. We had a spouse, we had E&G, we had Mike and I. And we were doing this all from the confines of their hotel room.
And it wasn't even their hotel room. It was his girlfriend's room, and she was still asleep when we showed up.
Yeah, girlfriend was sleeping in the back room, and we were in the front room of the hotel. And, so we set up, and we had this really cool conversation about old times and all this stuff.
It was the first time we used the mixer, too.
Oh, that's true.
The only way that we were able to pull it off was he had just bought the studio mixer.
Yeah, Mike had invested in a big mix mod, or a big mixer with a number, with more channels than your average Bear. And we were able to get everybody. And so it was a really cool opportunity after probably 15 years.
Well, it was fun to hear you guys talk about some of this stuff, like life on the road and experiences that you guys had together.
Yeah.
I think they peed on the Music Hall of Fame in Nashville.
Greg did. Yeah. so
I mean,
anyway, so you got to go back and listen to the episode. There were a couple milestones. There was also a really long show. It was about almost nearly 2 hours. And, it was a great walk down memory lane for me and them and Mike, who was sort of tangentially involved in that we had played Pocatello at some point and come through, and Mike was helping out with lights and sound.
That must have been towards the end of the touring days.
Mm-hmm. And, because it was Cottonmouth Kings, Mix Mob, and Mower, I think.
Yeah.
And you were doing the lights and the sound.
And that's how I met Ryan.
Yep, and that's actually how we connected. So he had been hearing, basically for the tenure of our relationship, he's been hearing about the Mix Mob guys and life on the road and the stuff that we used to do and all that stuff. And so it was great to sit these guys down, talk to them about all these old memories, and actually have them reaffirm half the crap I've said, because I could have easily been lying all these years.
Well, I mean... A later guest we're going to talk about, I was like, sure, yeah, you know that guy.
Yeah. So anyway, it was tons of fun hanging out with the dudes and reminiscing about old times. The guys we had on the show were Ryan Weaver, the lead singer, Greg Kellen, guitar player, and Mike Counts, the other guitar. Matt Rowe, their bass player, and James Lewis, the drummer, were not available. They had already flown out, so they weren't able to be on the show. We replaced them with E&G, Mike's wife, and a sleeping girlfriend in the background. So, and actually, I think Ryan's wife, Michelle, may have made an appearance. She was at least in the room. I can't remember. Yeah. So, anyway, great show, great times. That was episode number 43, all the way back in March of 2018. So, our guests and Eggy Award winner for Most People Interviewed at Once, the Mix Mob.
Let's go back in time a little bit. And let's talk about the band a little bit. So Mix Mob, when I joined them, were sort of established already, but they had been run around doing all sorts of different shapes of music, different bands, different things up to the time that I met them. And guys, anyone feel free to just pipe in, but let's talk about sort of the early phases, maybe even pre-Mix Mob, before you guys became a group. Yeah. Sort of everybody's stories.
I heard something about recording a song in a garage.
I'll get to that, but I think Mike is probably pre all of that, because I think so. I would say Matt is probably somewhat of the kind of the Kickstarter, if you will. I think Matt is the one that wanted to form a band. I don't know he knew what it was going to look like. I think he was very much into punk. A lot of these Sublime songs that he would play like acoustically, not acoustically, like bass and drums, and not have a singer. I remember a lot of that in my high school days, just partying around, and they would just put their drum set up with our friend Nate and Matt, and they would do that. And so Mike has history prior to me even being in that world
before
that maybe you want to share first, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it was I used to play with Matt and our buddy Nate. Nate played drums, Matt played bass, and we used to play in my garage.
You used to sing too, right? A little.
Yeah, I used to sing.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then and it was just really like high school punk rock.
No, but you had one song that I wish we would have stolen. We should still do it. I remember this that you covered, and you just reminded me. They recovered a punk version of Lionel Richie's "Stuck on You."
We did a punk rock version of Lionel Richie's
"Stuck on You."
Stuck on You. I used to sing that song. Wow, it's terrible.
No, you sang it way better than I could, and it was good. Actually, I liked it.
But that was kind of like the start of this whole thing, because I was in a band before that with some other friends in high school, and then I kind of just started playing with Matt and Nate, and it was nothing serious. We were just messing around. I think we played like 2 or 3 shows. Maybe played a party or two, and I don't even know if you might have probably been at.
I might have. I don't know. I'm not sure.
But and then and then obviously it just did. It fizzled out or whatever. And then I just remember one day, like Matt called me up out of the blue, and I hadn't heard from him for a little bit, and he was like, man, I'm doing this thing right now, and I want you to like play guitar, and it's with this guy. I don't know if you remember him, Ryan Weaver. And I was like, killing myself trying to figure out who in the fuck is Ryan Weaver. It's not that one jackass from high school, is it? Yeah, it was. It turned out it was.
Yeah, no. And so that's where he found out. So rewind a few months before that happened. So Matt and I were friends, and my buddy Nate, and I can name all of our high school buddies, Diego, Paul, like all this crew of people that we'd go on campfires and we'd play acoustic guitars, and we would screw around and make up lyrics and songs. And
when was this? Like,
this is like, I mean, literally, I don't know if it was late high school or just exiting high school. Oh man, it would be like 94, 95,
not
96.
Trying to date you or anything.
No, it's fine. You can date us. We're dated. It is what it is. But so no, we would make up these songs, and I think there was a point where Matt noticed something. I don't know when it was, because Matt, this is why like Matt's kind of this mad genius of orchestration of the front end of this thing, and because I think I wanted to do this sort of thing. I always liked attention, as you probably could have guessed that I enjoy that.
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of a weird, I'm embarrassed of it, but I also know that I like to be, whatever. So I was a clowny kind of guy, any stupid thing in school, I'd be the one getting in trouble for doing the stupid thing, the stunt or whatever. And then on top of that, the music piece comes in. And so we just went, and so to your point about that I just told you about the storage unit. So he had a 4-track recorder. I didn't even know what the fuck that was. Excuse me, what that was at the time.
Fine.
You can say fuck.
All right. I didn't know what that was at the time, to be quite honest with you. I was like, cool, let's go record music. I mean, the recorder I knew of, it was probably this big, and you push record with the orange button within the play button. Then you push
had a little cassette tape with wheels.
Yeah, that's the recorder I knew.
What's that?
Yeah, so a 4-track was like, ooh, cool, you have different channels? That's amazing, So Matt and I are in this 4x4 storage room with a 12-pack of Keystone. I think it was Keystone Ice, because that was the more potent one at the time, if I remember right. And we recorded the worst rap song known to history, and with his drums and him playing drums with like a standard 4-count beat and a bass line. And it turned into our first song that we probably thought was amazing at the time, because we opened with it like repeat. It was the best thing ever.
Hey, but Weaver,
go
real
ahead.
quick though, I think like you had some history though playing music with your dad.
Not really. I mean, my dad was in a band, and I don't know if it was history that I would play with him. Like no, my dad was his own deal. Like no, I wouldn't say that. I think later, because of this, we connected more. Like he got into what I was doing, and I got more into what he was doing. Gotcha. But I don't think it was something like we talked about a whole lot before that.
Right,
so
but you had a little familial background in music anyway.
For sure. I mean, my dad loves writing music, and he's similar. He likes that crowd energy. He likes that feeling of the back and forth.
So we've got him to blame for all this.
It's partly to blame for sure. He's got some, there's some genetics probably in there. I think that we all have a little genetics. I think we can all point to a little bit of that in some way, shape, or form. So, all right. So let's see. Let's bring Greg into the mix. So Greg, it was me, Matt. Oh, excuse me. I went up to Newport Beach for a while, left for a summer. That's when he grabbed Mike. And so Mike, and then our first drummer, Taylor, which I would probably call like more like a hippie, like very good drummer, but very technical, not like a straight ahead Sublime 4-count.
Yeah.
He's more like he would be more
very
happy.
Technical. The guy that holds his sticks different.
He was kind of like the salmon swimming up our stream. Like he was very good. He fit with us. He was good, great drummer. But he was one that would rather do, as opposed to a song, he'd probably rather do a jazzy thing that was like an off count being. He would think that's cooler than what we were actually doing.
Yeah.
So he was our first drummer that was musically talented, but more on a different level where you have to be musically aware to appreciate it, where the general public does not appreciate that. And so that he's the front end. So it's Taylor, Mike, Matt. I come back in the fold when I come back, and we start writing those songs fully as a band. And we're like, we need a DJ. And I think we said we needed a saxophone player. And I think we needed a keyboard player and all these things. And my buddy, Zach Von Felton, remember?
Yep.
Said, hey, there's a really good guitar player. I'm like, well, we got a guitar player. And but somehow we just brought him in and tried it out. So we tried out this. So what it became was this rhythm and lead kind of trade-off where he'd do rhythms on one and one would do a little lead line on the other. And it wasn't like solo focused, but it was like,
it's just levels, you know. We'd build up, I don't know, just guitars that work together.
Yeah.
And
Layers.
Neither of us were really soloing, but we were just experimenting with all kinds of cool sounds and different styles. And it was college when I came into the fold.
Yeah.
So,
no, this is all college. At this point, we're up to like 20, 21-year-old.
I was 20.
So were you all in like a bachelor pad or something? Just
Yes.
jamming all the time?
Yeah. Oh, and Taylor would play he'd have those turntables.
Yeah.
And we put up these disco balls, and we thought we had the coolest pad ever. And he would spin Tupac records. Like, we try to bring girls back. Sorry, my wife's over there, but like, we try to bring girls back, and Taylor would be spinning his records. And
God, I remember that shit.
yeah, it was the best because
I gotta tell a story.
Go ahead.
Okay, our first show ever was at Taylor's house.
Oh,
And we set up in his garage, right? And it's just a normal 2-car garage, and a band takes up quite a bit of space.
Yeah.
And we just started cramming people into this house.
Well,
and we had people like sitting down in front of us in the garage all the way up to the mic stands and all over the place.
right now we're bragging about how much we filled the garage.
There was like 50 people.
No, so we got through like 4 songs and the police showed up.
Yeah. No, but
that was our first show.
So the first show, which is perfect because we had like 5 songs.
I think we had.
So to get
we had
kicked
5
out-
and a
Didn't have
half.
to hit
We had
repeat
5 and a
again?
half.
So to get kicked out at 3 seemed like we had a lot left.
Yeah, people didn't realize how short that set list was.
It was done.
Okay, wait, hold on though. That was a lot of fun. We ended our first show with a bang. We thought because the 4 songs went off great.
By this is under the name Flipside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we're gonna go for the big time, man. We're gonna book a show, and it's not gonna be in a garage. And so our first show is booked at a Chinese food restaurant.
Japanese.
Oh, Japanese.
Tokyo Gardens.
Tokyo Gardens.
Tokyo Gardens, man. We tore that place up.
And I think we had about 40 people show up.
45 maybe.
We were
And that's pretty
so-
good for a Chinese
Yeah,
restaurant.
for a first
Oh,
show.
yeah.
Japanese place.
Japanese.
Now,
Yeah, sorry.
so
Did
now
they have a buffet in the
No
back?
offense to our.
No,
I don't
hey,
know.
let me tell you though, really good. They do have good Japanese food there.
does it still exist?
Still there.
Oh,
It
wow.
is. Yeah.
So third show.
Union show.
Third show was a place called Jack's House.
That was a good show. That
Well,
was
we
fun.
pumped the hell out of that party. We put flyers. Now, mind you, at that time, flyers, if you had a color flyer, like forget it, you were big time.
Yeah.
Like
This was
we
pre-MySpace.
we printed our picture on a colored piece of paper.
Whoa.
Yeah. And stapled it up everywhere.
And it actually seemed bigger than probably every other flyer was just like standard Word document text. Like that's what it felt like at that time.
Well,
Like,
that's all they really had
Comic
available.
Sans.
You know?
pretty much Comic Sans or some like impact.
The same font on everything.
Yeah.
Well, we were. This is how much time we had on our hands. We would make these flyers, and I remember like we would cut. You do, but this was before any kind of Photoshop or any kind of like
Yeah, we're cutting
electronic
the
thing.
pictures.
Like we would actually like physically cut the picture out and then tape it onto it, and like cut
put it on
other
the
stuff
photo.
out, and then like make a photocopy of
That's
that.
right. We'd go through magazines.
And I remember-
and
Yeah.
find like
Looked like
crazy-
ransom letters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember I have vivid memories of like spending like hours at night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And
Dude,
we're
we
at
were like,
Kinko's.
I'm gonna
By
make
the way,
you look way cooler than we really are.
Is there even
Yeah.
Kinko's still, or is it's FedEx Kinko's?
FedEx Kinko's.
Dude, we're not going to get a conversation about whether or not it's Kinko's anymore.
No, but I'm just saying.
I don't want to get into mergers of FedEx and Kinko's.
Well, hey,
Did they
we're
merge?
always on the hunt for sponsorship, you know, so we'll take FedEx Kinko's if they
So,
want to come along.
no, but I have memories of like spending hours doing that shit and then making the.
All right. Up next, we got Melinda Livesey. And
Yeah, special guest Melinda. Melinda is a businesswoman, entrepreneur, designer, consultant, woman of many hats out in Southern California. She is sort of tangentially related to some other folks who have become pretty prominent on this show. The guys over at The Future, namely Matt and Ben Encina, Matt Encina and Ben Burns.
Yep.
Yeah, the way I was going to say it sounded like they were married or something. Matt and Ben Encina is what I was going to say.
Yep.
So anyway, hats
she
off to
runs
those
a company
guys.
called
Yep, she
Makers
runs
and
Marks
Marks and
Maker.
Makers. I always wanted to be like Maker's Mark.
Yeah. I have to think that's a little bit by design. But Melinda is a super talented person who we came across, and honestly, I wish I could remember better who made the actual introduction. I feel bad. I should have sent somebody a card or something. But Melinda was introduced to us. She was kind enough to give us a little bit of her time, and she, at least for me personally, was kind of going through some similar struggles as I had been with my business at the time, and basically what had happened is I got laid off from an opportunity where I had been consulting for an ad agency and was laid off and basically back out on my own, had to turn around and try to build business back up for myself. And I was grabbing at straws. I was reaching out to every person I could come up with that might have some advice or might have some direction they could provide that would help us out with actually moving our business forward again. And so Melinda is one of the names that came up in there. And I think it might have something to do with one of the other award winners, who shall remain nameless at this point.
Nameless.
Because she was more or less mentored by the same guy and, really involved with him. And sort of the direction or the path he set her on, she later handed down to us. And it became really useful information for me in my business. And the relationship we sort of kicked off with her was a really great one.
Yeah, it was actually kind of neat to talk with her because I'd come to find out she's a classical pianist like I am. And because of that, I kind of got the itch to go and sit down and tickle the ivory again and play the piano for a little bit. And so I went and found a studio spot at Idaho State University that had some pianos and started practicing, and I still want to get in there and finish learning how to play Rachmaninoff Prelude in C sharp minor, because that we had talked about it in the show, and so I'm going to actually do that at some point. It's crazy right now finding the time, but we're going to make it happen.
Yeah. So anyway, we talked to her about a lot of things, starting out as a young designer, the joy of working for like an in-house design team where she worked for like Oakley and some other really cool brands. She also went on to talk about the founding and the business that she runs, Marks and Maker, sort of the power of mentorship and finding those people in your life, and just the life of women in design. For guys in the design business, they know that it's a very male dominant world, and so it's really interesting, or in my mind, it was very interesting to get her perspective on the game. So really cool. So anyway, her episode was episode number 59. We spoke to her back in June, and she has gotten the impression, or the Eggy Award for the Open Book Award.
Yeah, she just opened up.
Basically, that was it. She just opened up the floodgates. She let us really inside her business, inside her thinking, everything else. And she continues to, actually. If anybody follows her, watches her content that she produces with The Future, anything she's doing on her own, her newsletter, etc. I mean, you can really follow her transformation from step one to now. Through all these documents. She's been wildly transparent and doing really all she can to sort of give back to the community. So she's a really great person, a really interesting listen. So here's a clip.
Can you break that down for us, the discovery, direct, and design process, and why those steps are important to working with your clients?
Yeah. So that was one big thing that changed as I got coached by Chris, was that my process was more like, hey, fill out this questionnaire, client, give me all the information and I'll design for you. It wasn't a collaborative experience. And so in talking to him, he said, you know, you need to graduate more to a strategic role where you're actually helping your clients decide if that thing they came to you for actually should be built, if it's going to be an expense to them or an investment. And so the process that I go through now, thanks to Chris, I start out with finding out their goal. Like, why is it that you even came to me? So not just, what do you want to build? Oh, you want to build a logo and you need a brochure. Like, I ask why, like, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you opening up a new business? Are you needing to rebrand because you're not attracting the right kinds of people? So I'm trying to get at the core problem, and I start there. And then we go to the discovery phase, which is, I call it a strategic workshop. Some people call it discovery. And it's a framework that I take people through. It's about a 2-day workshop, and it's with the clients or their stakeholders. So anyone that would have a decision-making power, the C-suite, if they have one, they would be in that meeting. And we go through this framework of who's the brand and the positioning of the brand in the marketplace. And we talk about their ideal clients. We make a persona of the ideal client or clients. And then we talk about priorities and their goals and what we actually should build that would link the brand to the client. So a lot of times that is a rebrand. That's brand identity. Maybe that's new messaging. Sometimes that is a new strategy in their social media. And so it's all what we're trying to do is we see the brand, we see the ideal client, and then we decide what deliverables make sense to connect the two and to attract those ideal clients.
So you're essentially figuring out who they want as customers and then trying to attract them. So instead of like going for the McDonald's, you're going for the steakhouse clients. Or analyzing what they want to see and what they want to get, and then trying to put the product that you're going to, the end result, to go towards those people.
Yeah, so we don't start with the end product in mind. So if someone comes to me like, hey, I need a website, it's like, okay, cool. You might need a website. Let's talk about why you need it. What's going on that you do need one? And then we find out, oh, their sales are down, or their website is a lot of broken links, or like we find out there's something wrong, but what is driving them to want that website? So we figure out all the why and the what first, and then we go to the how.
Yeah.
Or really we start with the why and then the what and then the how.
I noticed
how are we actually going to execute that?
On your LinkedIn profile, you have a banner on the top that says as little design as possible. And I was thinking, well, that's kind of counterintuitive for a graphic designer. But now that, you break it down as a strategy kind of mindset, then, the last thing that you do is to design the actual product, because you want to figure out what you need first. Because if you just start and just go without thinking about it, you end up building something you don't need, or going through a lot of steps that you don't need to go through to get to the finished.
Yeah. Well, and what I noticed too, coming from a strictly just freelance graphic designer perspective, someone would come to me and they would say, I need this designed. I would say, okay, I need this information. I would execute it. It'd probably be 20 revisions later and me angry at the client and the client frustrated. And they got what they needed. And over time, I realized that their business wasn't doing that well. And it would happen multiple times. Like, I've worked with many businesses and not that I'm responsible for their how they run their business, but I think I can offer way more value now to people, because I'm like, yeah, you might need that, but let's see if that's an expense or an investment. Like, is that actually needed? Because I want my clients to only invest in things that will move the needle, not just hire me to execute on their idea that maybe wasn't good in the first place.
How do you
because it wasn't thought through.
How do you track the needle? I mean, do you actually get into financials with them and say, hey, what are you doing annually? And then kind of see what next year does, or do you just kind of guess?
I'm starting to, I am starting to get into that as I feel more comfortable with doing that. I have been asking people though, what their goals are as far as financially. Some people have no idea. And most of the people who are doing well do know their numbers and they're willing to share. So it's almost like a gauge to see where that client is in their business too, is if they can say those numbers and they don't mind. If they're like trying to, hide their cards, then that tells me like, well, they one, don't trust me. And two, maybe they don't even know.
Yeah.
And that's why they're not telling me. And
or they're not doing as good as they're trying to put off.
Right.
So.
Right. So, yes, I'm starting to. I would like to get more into that because then we can track. It's almost like the strategy process is our hypothesis. Like, okay, this is our plan, knowing what we know about the ideal client. Sometimes they do bring data in, marketing research that they have already done, and that really helps. And then we can really track like, oh, did we actually attract the people we had planned to in the first place? And so it is good to reevaluate. I just haven't done this strategic process. I mean, really, I'm coming on a year of doing it. I haven't done it long enough to be able to see the impact it's made just yet. So one of the clients, the first ones I've done it with, I'm starting to talk with her about like, okay, let's recheck in and see, did we actually hit what we had hoped? But again, I don't promise. I'm not like the marketing research side, so I don't promise numbers. I say the strategy is a plan to win the war. It doesn't mean we are. It means that it gives us a direction and how to move forward, and then we'll reevaluate later.
Our next guest is Jamal Collins. Jamal runs jworking.com and Creative Kids, which is a community outreach program for disenfranchised or impoverished youth in the Cleveland area. And he's just, an exceptional guy, class dude.
Well, if you ever get some time, follow him on Instagram and see what he's doing. He works one-on-one with these kids and kind of gives them hope. You know, gives them like a reason to come and work and learn, and it's really inspiring for people.
Basically what he did is after years of decline and hardship in Cleveland, Jamal started a little program offering graphic design training to these underprivileged kids in the hardest hit parts of Cleveland. He's from there himself, and he's sort of dedicated his life to rebuilding that city. And, and he's doing it one creative student at a time. He's giving these kids opportunities that they might not otherwise have sought out.
Well, and he's teaching them life lessons too, which I like. He's sitting down with them one-on-one and showing them, okay, you're spending all this time watching YouTube videos when you could be creating the content on the YouTube videos and monetizing it, or doing this or that. Why watch this guy play video games all day when you can create the content and actually generate revenue with it, which is pretty cool stuff.
Well, and I think for a lot of these impoverished youth and people like this that are having a hard time as kids, having a mentor like this who can give them some direction and really steer the ship. And the fact that he's doing it from such a good place. He's just all in. He's really giving of himself to the community and really trying to build something up. There's no ulterior motive. This is all about helping people. And for us, it was really impactful and just an amazing thing. Our conversation with him was a great one. We had him for about an hour remotely from Cleveland. We actually recorded that here at Access 2 prior to having the studio. We spoke to him back in August, and it's episode number 66, if you want to go back and check him out in long form. So let me announce, very proudly actually, the Community Outreach Award Eggy winner is Jamal Collins.
My family is close-knit. It's not super big, but my parents are still married. So I had, two sets of grandparents. I was lucky to have them in my life as well. So I did have this structure,
In most people these days, I wouldn't say most people, a lot of people don't get that these days. Most people are, mom and dad have split and they're having two Christmases, and, it's not the,
Well, so do you think it was your family being close like that sort of, I don't know, gave you the strength to get through some of these struggles? Because it seems like growing up as a youth, when I think I read somewhere or heard somewhere that, like you alluded to, the drug problem or cocaine was becoming a real big issue there. It'd be pretty easy for a youth growing up to get wrapped up in all that stuff. And it seems like largely you were able to avoid it. Do you attribute any of that to your family or sort of the tight-knittedness of your family?
Definitely, but I want to say that the odds was in my favor because even with the tight knit family, I was kind of headed in the wrong route. It was just a matter of time for me to, even with the support, wasn't enough. So I had guys who had the same structure, and they kind of, his first offense landed him in jail for 15 years. So it was like a thin line between, making the wrong move, and it would kind of cost you your life.
Right. So at what point did you, I guess, I mean, I don't know that much about your design background. I mean, are you an artist by design, by trade, or are you a graphic designer? And what sort of, I guess, nudged you into picking up the pen or picking up the mouse?
Yeah, as far as I can remember, I was always drawing. So I was always doing illustrations, like as far as I can remember, like 5 years old. And I kind of fell in love with like Marvel and about, I want to say 11 and 12. And then popular culture where hip hop came in. So I kind of gravitated towards graffiti. So I kind of leaned heavy on doing graffiti, and I kind of fell in love with that. So, and there was some other guys around me that was like top graffiti artists. We didn't have any trains or anything, but guys were definitely bombing down by our train system. So it was some vocational programs at my school. It was a lot of them. It's so funny. Like we got access to our old yearbook, so I'm looking through there and I'm seeing all of these different things we had. It was amazing. We had golf, we had volleyball, we had. The one thing that I do know we had was commercial arts, but I couldn't get in there because of my grades. But I never really like pushed hard. I kind of talk about this a lot. Pushed hard on my parents to get me in there because you had Art 1 and Art 2, and then the next move was to go to commercial arts, the vocational program. So that was my problem. I never got in there. So
coming out of high school and not having that, the commercial arts program to kind of get you, your foot in the door, steer you there. What did you do different to kind of get into it later on? Like, did you go to college later on, or did you just kind of build a portfolio and start putting your work out there?
Actually, I went to college, and I had a buddy who he had graduated. He graduated. I visited Ohio University in the 9th grade. So he had graduated and he was already on campus, and he was cool with us. He told us to come and visit. So me and my buddy jumped on the Greyhound, and I came back a changed man. My mother didn't know who I was. I was like, I need to do my ACTs. Because it wasn't no internet yet. So doing your ACTs and SATs was like you had to, fill out the paperwork manually and mail it off. It wasn't like I could just type in universities and see, my financial aid. So it was like, you had to have a counselor really put the stuff and sit you and your family down, because my parents didn't go to college. My mother has a master's degree now, but I was the first person to go to college in my family because, back then, 70s and 80s, it really wasn't practical. It really didn't have to be, you didn't really have to go to college if you didn't want to. My father just got a good job paying good money. So if you could just go to LTV Steel and just get a job making buku money. So,
yeah. Is that what he did? Was he a steel worker?
He worked at General Electric.
Nice.
Yeah.
And just as a side note, what's your mother's master then?
What is it? A business administration.
Oh, nice. Well, that's really cool. So, I mean, do you get some of, clearly you're a little bit entrepreneurial. I mean, is that something that ran in your family?
I don't know. I don't think so. No, they was workers for the most part.
So you grew up sort of surrounded by that hardcore work ethic.
Right. Yeah. So I never needed anything, we never needed anything. So I never moved. So we wasn't moving a lot. So I had structure. I had all the latest Jordans. So I was pretty much, we was middle class. So I had stuff,
Yeah, well, and I know that, one of the drums that you beat a lot is about hard work and effort and putting in that time and stuff like that. And so it sounds like maybe that comes a little bit from your family. When you came back a changed man and got yourself into, it was University of Akron, is that right?
Yes.
University?
Yes.
What did you do in college? Was it a graphic design program or?
When I first got there, I was political science. I wanted to be a lawyer with an art studio. So somebody said, why don't you just be an artist? I was like, damn, you're right. I didn't know this was like an option. So I poked my head in the art building and they had something called, graphic design, illustrations, paintings, and stuff like this. And, the whole philosophy of being an artist back then was starving artists. So, this was like right when they was bringing the computers in. We didn't even have internet in the computer lab at this point. This was like 91.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was like the perfect timing because anybody who graduated before 90 didn't get that computer training that I was getting, an introduction to Photoshop. Maybe they was getting it, at the workplace, but.
Was Photoshop around that early in like 90, 91? Or was it just?
I think it was like the first one. We was kind of beta testing it. I don't think it didn't have any undos. I think I was making multiple documents because I didn't have that many layers. We was using a program called Freehand and Illustrator. So Freehand was like Illustrator.
How funny. Yeah, no, Photoshop like version 0.7 dropped in 88. So by the time you're in college in like June 91, they could have been in version 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's pretty early Photoshop. It's a far cry from what it can do nowadays. So I guess what I'm trying to drill down to. So, I mean, obviously you're a talented guy, artistic fella, went to school, learned some graphic design. What happens after you get out of school? Where do you go from there?
I landed a job at PricewaterhouseCoopers, but I kind of landed some other jobs. I landed a cool job before that because this was a little bit before. So this is 97. So this is a little bit before Silicon Valley and all that happens. So it's like this rush of, HTML. What you see is what you get. Dreamweaver. We're doing 3D Max. I was doing 3D Max and DOS. So this, I'm thinking of introducing to, we're doing DVDs and I was doing all of this stuff. And then I kind of bounced around a little bit and I landed my first good paying job at Price Waterhouse. And they merged with Coopers and Lybrand and went from that to Price Waterhouse Coopers.
What was
stayed there? My position was I was a graphic designer, so I was responsible for all the collateral for the accounting firm. They had their own printing services, so I was able to do everything in-house.
So I assume with accounting as the driving factor, it wasn't the most glamorous work ever?
Man, it was horrible. It was horrible. It was okay until they administrated the brand guidelines. So the brand guidelines, it was very challenging. I had to try to figure out how to stay within these guidelines and still pull off something cool. So I don't think they really liked me a lot. So they was really trying to keep me confined and, they didn't really want me to shine too much because I was doing stuff in Flash.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was like the
it was pretty cutting edge at the time.
Yeah, Flash was like everyone wanted the Flash site.
Definitely.
Forever to load.
Well, so obviously you're working with a lot of kids growing up now and the world is a lot different. Do you count yourself lucky? So for me, you're a little bit older than me, but we're sort of contemporaries in age. And, I sort of have a similar trajectory. I think I started in Photoshop 5 and, but sort of self-taught and learned how to do it all myself and all that stuff. And, but what I found is that just because of my age and sort of having a period of my life ahead of the internet and a period of life after the internet, I was able to sort of cull together all those skills, some programming, some HTML, some Flash, some, illustration, design, all those things and nowadays people are a lot more focused. Do you think you're sort of, I guess, maybe a more well-rounded designer because of just strictly being how old you are?
I think so. Yeah. Cause I was inside of DOS. So it started just my friend had called me and was like, look, man, this was around 90. This was before I went to PricewaterhouseCoopers. He was like, we got to jump on this website stuff. They're making websites. So it was always, we wanted to stay on top of stuff just to, keep our sword sharpened. So, it was understanding code and, DVDs, action scripting, getting in Director. So, you know, a lot of guys don't know nothing about this stuff. So I definitely would say yes to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's my experience. So it's interesting to hear that too, you know, because this is happening sort of in parallel with your story.
Yeah, I was editing video in Premiere back then.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, and I guess also through your opportunity at Price Waterhouse, you had the opportunity to learn pre-press and actually work, you know, in press before everything became digital, which I've found, at least in my experience, that knowing how to actually print stuff is a pretty valuable skill nowadays, because a lot of kids don't grow up with that.
Right. The thing, my problem with PricewaterhouseCoopers is I had poor people skills at the time.
That's something that I think comes with age. I have poor people skills still.
I know. That's why I kind of deal with the kids mostly.
Yeah, no, well, and I mean, that's pretty key. And I imagine it's something you guys focus on in your work with the kids, because people skills are pretty key, actually, you know, and a lot of people don't feel like, you know, kowtowing or behaving a certain way around people or whatever, but it's a real life learning that you've got to treat people the right way.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, if you want to get ahead anyway.
Exactly. You nailed it.
So speaking of the kids, talk about that for a little bit. How'd you get involved? You work with the Boys and Girls Club. You teach design. I think on your website you call it Creative Kids.
Yes.
Can you break that down for us? How you got into that, what motivated you to do that, and you know, just kind of give us a brief overview.
Yeah, sure. So what happened is that the economy tanked and that left me out of work, and I was searching for clues, trying to be a designer. It wasn't working out, and I was, you know, suffering from this for a long time. I was unemployed for 5 years, and yeah. So I had read a little article like people might not want to hire you if they see a large gap. You know how you search for stuff in Google and it just kind of break your heart. So I started volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club, and I saw an opportunity to teach, and it was in a tough area. It's kind of outside my comfort zone. And then, you know, I just did it. So I have no teaching background at all. And this area was rough and tough. So I guess it was a good initiation to get me started, you know, going. I seen some consultants coming in, and I was like curious how that worked, because I don't think they really knew I was a designer. I think they just thought I was an artist, or maybe they knew, but they didn't know to the extent. Yeah. So we had an event for the kids, and I did some posters pro bono for corporate, and they was kind of like, wow, we know you could do this. So at the same time, I kind of mentioned, like, I seen some IMAX, let me, you know, put the Creative Cloud on there and teach these guys something that they can really, you know, value from it. So
what time is this? How long ago?
It's been 4 years since I did that. So I only worked as an art instructor for a year, and after that I resigned and came back as a consultant. And at the time, I think I was moving at 2 locations, and it kind of grew to 7. So I average about 100 kids a month. A lot of the stuff I do kind of, you know, raise some more eyebrows in other places. So I'm at another school district at Richmond High School. It's a smaller district, but they have a cool program for coders for the middle school. So I kind of teach them graphic design with the coders.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I teach junior college during the day, cinematography. Some of my videos on my vlog kind of got some attention from some professor at one of my professors at Tri-C. So that's Cuyahoga Community College. So I do that, and also do some workshops at a place called PNC Fairfax. If you could catch me, I do one-on-one, you know, with kids too. So parents want to get some one-on-one training. So we might meet at a coffee shop or something, and we get it in.
So can you talk about the Boys and Girls Club, what it is, how kids, you know, I have a roommate that I think was pretty involved in the Boys and Girls Club when he was a kid, but I never really, like, it wasn't part of my life. I don't know anything about it. Is there like an age limit where you can start coming, and then you just kind of come after school and hang out while your parents are at work? And
Yeah, definitely. So it's different locations spread out. Some of them have school sites, so they're within the school. Some of them have their own locations. It's an after-school program, and I don't know how early it is, but I think school agers all the way up to 18. So they have different brackets. They have homework support. They have meals. They have activities. They have stuff for, the boys, something called like Passport to Manhood. And then they have programming coming in. Like, so we have a band program, we have ballet, and we have, me doing graphic design, and they may have like some hip hop dance, African drums, things like that. So, they go on, a lot of field trips, they have a lot, it's a big, probably one of the largest nonprofits. So they have huge partners like the Cleveland Browns and Indians. So they get their teeth cleaned at the Cleveland Indians Stadium and all this stuff like that. So it's amazing stuff that they could do. They got college programs that they could, send kids to college. And we have me coming in and giving them something more than just, crayons and markers, really giving them something tangible that they could turn into a workforce opportunity.
All right. Up next, we've got one of my favorite episodes of the year. I really enjoyed this interview, not only from a good interview standpoint, and the content was awesome, but he's someone that I've kind of looked up to and followed for a long time. We've got Johnny from OPM.
Yeah.
And he's a friend of Ryan's. We alluded to him earlier as Ryan claiming to know him, but not. But yeah, he actually does.
Yeah. So singer of the band OPM, his name is John Edney. John is a Southern California-based singer, songwriter, all that good stuff. He's was the singer and founding member of a band called OPM. For you youngsters out there, you may not know him. It's been a minute since they were in the spotlight, but they were most well known for a song called "Heaven Is a Half Pipe." In fact, it's still on the radio in Europe all these years later.
It's featured on Tony Hawk.
Yeah, it was in the Tony Hawk video game. It's been kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And in fact, Mike has a sweet edit of it. He drops in every now and then.
I redrummed it with the beat from Tipsy, and it was one of my first edits that I ever made, and it's horrible.
So anyway, a few milestones here, as we talked about at the beginning of the show. This year was kind of impactful for us in that we reached some milestones. And so one of the things that we did is we took the show on the road. Basically, we traveled to Southern California to meet with some people and do a number of different podcasts while we were in the area. And one of them was with John while we were down there.
And he was kind enough to let us come into his home studio.
Yep.
And do the podcast with his equipment. I didn't even have to set up mics. It was perfect.
It was great. Yeah, over at M&O Studios in Marina Del Rey, California. Johnny was a really interesting interview. I've known him it's got to be 10 years or more by now. And, but I learned a ton of stuff I didn't even know about him. I think having Mike there, the benefit was he was there to ask all the questions that, I wouldn't otherwise ask. And so we got a really deep dive into the early days of OPM, its beginnings, the national success, the international success, life on the road, the touring with the biggest bands on the planet, and rubbing elbows with all the important folks in the industry. And then also sort of the decline, the way back down, which I think was really insightful and sort of, really cool of him to be so transparent with that. A lot of people might try and bloat their success or act a certain way about stuff. But, at this point, Johnny felt comfortable talking about sort of the rise and the fall.
We're going to have to reach out and get him back on. He's just about to launch his brewery.
Yep, that's right. So. Tarantula Hill Brewing out in, I'm forgetting the name of the city. Yeah.
It's where
Southern
he grew
California.
up. Yeah. The city.
We talk about it in the show. Go listen to the show.
Go listen to the show. It's a good one.
So the other milestone that was interesting, so not only was he part of taking eggs on the road, he is also the winner this time around for the Eggy Award for the longest show of all time.
He actually left and picked up his daughter and came back and finished the show for another hour.
Yeah,
probably.
We basically did in total about 3.5 hours with Johnny. And actually, we slipped in there while Johnny was gone.
Rico from Ease Up.
We got a guy named Rico from Ease Up. We actually have never published that. We need to share that.
We just need to actually hit the button and say, hey, this is the show.
Yeah, we actually have an extra half hour with another band from that day. So
maybe we'll release that at some point.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, his music's good. Like Ease Up, going and listening to him. They're on our Egg Spotify playlist. But
yeah, go check them out. They're great.
Really enjoyed his music.
Yeah, really cool band. So shout out to Rico, and one of these days we'll publish that. I mean, it's sitting in queue. It just needs to be released.
We're just going to sit on it for 5 years and randomly put it out.
It's supposed to be bonus footage that was supposed to be part of this interview, but we blew it. So one of these days we'll drop it. It'll be a little Easter
I think it
egg
actually is on the end of the first episode. It's there, but we put it out by itself, and that's why we never released it, because it's at the end of the other one.
Got it. So anyway, this was a really, like I said, insightful interview, really interesting. Lots of fun music business talk and just sort of showbiz talk.
He worked in the AR as a rep for...
He was an A&R guy for like Island Records and some of these big record labels. And he, rubbed elbows with a lot of interesting folks. So it was a really cool conversation. We also did get into microbrewing and talking about his new company, the Tarantula Hill Brewing. And it's really a great interview. A lot of great times, and it was another one of these great catch-up times.
Yeah.
Hanging out with an old buddy and really going long form with him.
Well, and even since then, he's been in contact with me on the social platforms, and it's cool. I feel like I've got this friend that I know now. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, really cool. So anyway, we met with Johnny July 19th. Well, the show was released July 19th. It's episode 62 and 63 of the Eggs podcast. So jump online, check it out. Both are worth a listen. And the winner of the Eggy for the longest show ever, John Edney, singer of King.
I met a guy through a friend of mine who's a girl. She started dating this guy who worked in the music industry, and we hung out one night, and he's like, dude, I've been working in the industry for a long time, and and we were talking about music, obviously, and he was like, you know more about music than most people I work with, and you'd think that people that work in the industry would know about music. He's like, but a lot of them, it's just a job, and they don't know. And he kind of was implying that the people who are passionate about music and do have a large knowledge, sort of excel in the industry because
it's not everybody.
It's not everybody's, and you should be.
Yeah, no, it's funny hearing that because a lot of things are making sense. Given where the industry has come and gone and everything, clearly not run by people who are passionate about music.
No, and because it's a commodity, and so there's anywhere where there's money, people will go and look at a way to just take some of that money.
Yeah.
But so he sort of took me under his wing and helped me find a job down there, and I got started as an intern at Island.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
That was my first gig. Actually, was at Mercury. He got me in to meet this woman, and I met with her, and she was like, "I got to get rid of my assistant. I'll tell you're hired. Whatever. You start Monday." So I walked into my boss. At the time, I was a maintenance man, right? So the deal with a maintenance man is that you live on the property. They give you free rent. They pay all your bills, and then they give you some spending cash, basically. But your whole world is this thing,
on
like
call,
you're on call,
24/7,
exactly, and all that stuff. Which I could tell you stories about that situation.
I'm recording. We got a problem.
Yeah. But anyways, so I walked into my boss and I was like, fuck you, here's my keys. I fucking quit. I got a fucking real job. I'm moving to Hollywood, And I show up there Monday morning and I go to the front desk and I'm like, hey, I'm reporting. They're like, okay, have a seat. She'll be right down.
And she didn't remember the conversation
like an hour
at all.
late. It goes like 2 hours ago. Yeah. She's like, finally my friend called her and she's like, I'm so sorry, but like me and my assistant, we made up over the weekend and I'm going to keep him.
And now you're jobless. You burnt the bridge.
Jobless and homeless.
Oh, man.
So my buddy felt so bad that he's like, dude, come live on my couch until you find another thing and get on your feet, whatever. But you're going to get a job down here.
That's a true friend right there.
Yeah. No, and he didn't even know me, like he was, and we became great friends, and I'm forever in his debt for that. Jay Schatz, if you're listening.
Shout out.
He's not going to listen to this. But anyways, so then I did eventually get an internship, which extended my life of my living on his couch, basically, because it was unpaid.
Right.
And then eventually they hired me as a scout, which got me some money, and I was able to kind of get on.
As a scout, you just go to all the shows in town and see who
this
you like.
This was at the time when like they signed bands by your performance at the Troubadour or the Roxy or the Whiskey.
Oh, that's awesome.
Crazy.
That's a pretty fun gig.
That's how it should be. I mean, like that's what they're selling really is their, their show, and that's what's going to put people in the doors and sell the tickets, and the album's just a bonus.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
If you can
anyway.
sound good up there, then you can probably record a good record, right? Yeah, it was crazy. And so LA at the time was so dominant in the industry because in New York you can't have a rehearsal room because there's no space there. No one can afford that much room or whatever. So LA, obviously it's more spread out and there's tons of rehearsal rooms and whatever, bands could get really good and whatever. So yeah, it was an amazing job. I could get into any club in Hollywood with my business card.
Yeah.
So I was just bawling out of control, on like $1,500 a month, and then everyone I hung out with was also, A&R guys or, other people in the industry, and they had expense accounts. So like, you go out and you're eating for free, drinks are free. Like it was
just living it up.
Insane.
And you were like 23 at this time.
Yes.
Right?
I was like 22. Yeah. 23.
That's awesome.
And traveling, going to the South by Southwest when it was cool.
Yeah.
Before it became a tourist trap.
South by Southwest.
With the roaming Wi-Fi.
Yeah, South by Southwest LLC.
Yeah. And trips to New York quite often, and my hanging out with my boss Lori, she was amazing, and she had an endless Amex card too. So and then I also, it was the Island, which was Bob Marley's label.
Yeah.
So the people that were kind of attracted to that world were kind of that thing, and so I became the inter-office weed dealer. Which turned out to be very lucrative business.
Yeah, especially
everyone
at Island,
in there smoked weed, right?
right?
So, and it was funny because this guy who was trying to get signed, I wanted to be signed, so they were very U2-ish.
Yeah,
and we also had U2, and so it was their dream label, right? And so like he was giving me like quarter pound of weed for like $100, like just trying to be. Like, he was probably growing it. He was just trying to get in with me or whatever.
Yeah,
he became my guy, whatever. So the profit margin was quite high. Work in the system there made it very
lucrative.
Yeah, made it was a great time. And then during that process, a big part of my job also was logging in demos. And if they came in, a lot of times the demos are coming in from important people, and so they need to be, but they're coming into also every day. The mail guy, his name was Kermit. Amazing. He would come to my desk and fucking dump out
200 demos on you.
Yeah, and CDs and whatever. And so I had to filter through that stuff and find the ones that were important people. So it's
100% your ear, pretty much.
I was the first layer of the filter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would filter through it, and then she would, if there was 1,000 CDs, she wanted me to bring her 10.
Yeah.
And she was very specific about what she wanted.
So when you listen to a CD as a band, if you're putting the tracks on the CD, there's an actual art to it. What would you recommend a band should do as far as like first track, layout, format of the CD if they're submitting it to a label? Like, is there anything that stands out to you that bands did?
The only thing that a major label cares about is being able to get you onto the radio, a commercial, a film, whatever.
So like I'm talking more like, do you put your first track first and then the one that you think is going to hit, and then like
not only do you put your first one your best one first, that best one better have that hook in the first
15 seconds. Yeah. So because that's all you really have time to listen to. If you have 1,000 CDs on your desk and you have to filter through them, you're not going to spend more than 40 seconds on each.
I need to know in a couple seconds if I want to keep listening to this for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have to imagine people did some pretty funny things back then. I'm sure now a lot of people just shoot over MP3s or whatever, but back then, I'm sure people were trying to do things to be noticed, making cool packages or cool whatever. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some cool stuff coming
crazy
across.
Yeah, like some of them were like full presentations, and you're just like, rip it out,
Throw it away.
for the CD, and then some of it was so corny, you're like, I'm not even gonna listen to that. Like you should have just sent me a blank CD and I probably would have listened to it. But anyways, also during that process, listening to it, not ever really even aspiring to be a musician, I was like, dude, I could do better than 99% of this stuff.
Yeah.
With no skills.
Yeah.
Like these people are clueless.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get
I've
guys
seen
that,
American Idol.
Yeah. And you get like, some people are so talented or whatever and still can't figure it out. And then there's people like the American Idol who just have no talent, and
Mom told them they were great for a lot of years, so they just ran with it.
Yeah. So during that time, I started thinking, I was like, man, I should probably start writing some songs, and I started at that point. And then during my time there, I'm really making my story very long because we're like still in the very, very beginning.
Oh, it's fine.
Sorry.
Yeah.
During that time there, Island sold. At that point, they were the largest independent label in the world.
Oh, wow.
They were still an independent, and they had U2.
Yeah, U2.
You know what I mean?
Come on.
And so they sold for a lot of money. And Chris Blackwell, who was the owner, he owed U2 so much money, they got a huge chunk of that. I think they got like 40% of the sale.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And right away, he was still meant to be the CEO of the label. And also he came with a film company. There was Island Films at the time. And right away things went bad. And he quit. He left. And new regime came in and whatnot, and it started to kind of crumble. So everyone was like, I right away started looking for a job.
Yeah.
So I got out of there. I went to work for a management company that managed the top 10 record producers in Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
Brendan O'Brien, Chris and Tom Lord Alge, they were mixing everything that was on K-Rock at that time.
Yeah.
And so on and so on. And I saw at that point Brendan O'Brien who produced and mixed all the Pearl Jam and Rage Against the Machine records.
That was what studio was that at? I think it was. I saw a documentary.
He owns his own studio. I'm pretty sure they would have all done them in his studio.
Okay, I might be getting mixed up. The documentary was a Foo Fighters documentary, and it was like talking about
here in the valley where Nirvana did that.
Yeah,
record.
Yeah, and it was a Neve board, and he ended up buying the board.
He bought the board.
And then what he did with it is he came back through and started re-recording the artists again with it and doing like a live thing. And it's really cool. If you get it, I can't remember. It's like Sessions or something like that. It's on Netflix. If you get a chance, look it up. It's a really good documentary. Anyways, sorry.
I have some good Dave Grohl stories too, if we want to get into that.
By all means.
Yeah, of course.
However this goes.
Yeah, then we can tag him.
All right, we'll get. I'll put that in chronological order.
Okay.
When we get there. Anyways, my point of working at the management company was I saw one of his royalty checks from, international. Or I saw all of his checks, to be quite honest, but some of them that came in for like, his royalties on like Pearl Jam records, for the world. And I was like, it was like, oh my God, I need to be doing this. So at that point I got a studio, and I was making good money at this place now. Cause I was kind of like, mid-management level. I kind of stepped up. And this manager also I could talk to you for days about this guy who I worked for, he's basically Oz of the music industry. He's the man behind
the guy.
Yeah. And just the little time I got to be around him, how much I learned, like, guy's a genius. But he's a very powerful person in Hollywood, whatever. So some of the people who I was talking about, like I was running around Hollywood with before, A&R guys and stuff like that, knew that I went in there, and they're like, oh, he's on the inside. So they were all very curious to see
what you were listening to in your car,
listening to, right? And if things were coming in that door that maybe weren't signed yet, and looking for a deal kind of stuff. So that we got them very curious. And this job was very the opposite. Like these people weren't going out and being seen. Like this manager has never been photographed ever, like crazy. And like the building that we're in was specifically designed that he had his own parking spot in the garage,
straight to where he needs to
an
go.
elevator, and the elevator went right into his office, kind of thing.
I kind of like that.
Yeah. He's pretty G.
Mastered being antisocial.
Yeah. And so anyways, I started thinking, I was like, this would be the time for me to like make a demo, and so I did. My sister's boyfriend at the time was just put together a little home demo studio. I was like, why don't you come down here and let's work on some tracks? And he did, and we put together a demo, and I went. And then there was also this thing back at the time that was called Hits Magazine, and there was a column writer, and he had a little block every week, and it was called Wheels and Deals. And it was like every A&R person subscribed to his magazine, and they opened up that Wheels and Deals, and this guy, he had the inside scoop.
Who did he work for?
He worked for Hits Magazine.
Well, yeah, but like, was he doing your job for Hits Magazine, and he just kind of got
just
not
a
really
dude
sure.
on the inside?
I don't, but everyone knew that he was the guy to kind of.
He had the ear that
if you were smart and you were trying to get your band signed, you made sure that he knew about it.
Okay.
Right, and so I don't know if that's actually how it went down, but I was like, I'm the smart guy that knows this secret.
Yeah.
Right. So, but the thing, the key was though, is that he got his information from A&R people.
Oh, so it's kind of like a.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of backwards.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So I knew that if I could get an A&R guy to say that they would sign this band, then I could call that guy and say, this person from this record label is about to sign this band. And then what happens is, the way the record labels are, it's like people at a garage sale, right? Like nobody wants any of your junk until someone's like, I want that.
Yeah.
How much is that? And then I was like, oh, I want that. Right? So that's how it works. So once you were in Hits under that thing and this guy said, I'm going to sign you, everyone starts trying to find that band and get him, and they want to get him before he gets it. What is it? What's hot? What's worth? Because at that point, like, you signed a band, you were dumping $1 million just to make the record at that point. So that's a pretty heavy investment, and like, you better be pretty sure about signing a band at this point. It was a different time, So I won't say who the guy's name is because I kind of, this is, I'm telling you the story of how I manipulated the system. But I went to someone who I knew would bite.
Yeah.
Right. And it was someone
it's just common sense. Yeah. It's like, why not?
Yeah. And I went into a guy and I was like, dude, I didn't tell him it was me. I said, check this shit out. These guys are going to fucking be huge. Check this out. And he's like, bring them in. They're signed. Done deal.
10 days later, it's you.
No shit.
Yeah, just hand me a pen.
I called the dude. I had no intention of signing to that label.
Yeah.
But I knew that there would be, if I played it right, there'd be a bidding war and I would get to pick whatever label I wanted. And so it all sent the dude the thing. He put it in the thing. Next thing I know, I'm getting calls from everybody. We're going to, obviously Atlantic is who we went with. Elektra, Virgin, Interscope came in, which wasn't as big of a deal as they are now at this point. Then, and Island actually even popped up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. All right. This next guest is Marcus. I don't think we know his last name, but I don't know if he wants us giving it out.
Well, he's just sort of known as Comedian Marcus.
Yes.
Marcus is I guess he would be the runner-up. Oh, wait, what's the new word? The
number 2.
Yeah, what's the one for number 2? Crap. I wanted to start using that word. Oh, penultimate. He's the penultimate winner. Sorry, inside joke. You're gonna have to go listen to that for all in the last couple of weeks. Anyway, they had a long conversation about the word penultimate. Penultimate means the second place.
So Marcus
was the penultimate winner of the of Last Comic Standing. He's from here in Salt Lake City. He's one of the bigger names in comedy here in the area. Another milestone for Eggs. He was our first comic, which was pretty exciting.
Actually, really cool. Very insightful too. I learned a lot.
Yep. Well, and beyond just being a comic, he'd actually evolved his career into business coaching. So it was sort of right up our alley. Like, it could not have been a better fit. Marcus was a really interesting dude, great conversation, and a lot of fun to talk to about stand-up comedy, business, and all this good stuff.
Well, and one thing that I thought was very interesting was there's a lot of parallels between his industry and mine, like the crowd control, the formatting the night, the planning. I mean, there's stuff that we think about that was very similar, and I thought it was pretty interesting to kind of pick his brain on that topic.
Yep, really cool. The other thing he did for us that was a lot of fun was he's sort of known for his impressions. So
yeah, if you noticed the last few episodes, we've had some kind of interesting, Adam Sandler appearances or
Jack Black, McConaughey, I think we did. So, I mean, lest you think that those people were actually in the studio.
No, we actually had them.
Yeah. So, but comedian Marcus also did a impression of them that was really good.
Yeah.
So we had him hang out. He gave us some free impressions because he's a sweetie that way, and we really appreciate him for it. So we are kind of giving him a double award, mostly because we're non-committal and couldn't figure out what to call it. He's only getting one plaque. So for best impressions and best comedic guest of the year, the Eggy Award goes to comedian Marcus.
We're just getting right into this. But yeah, the whole idea that, like, I use the open mic metaphor for a lot of the people that I work with. It's like I get to go to open mic, right? And somebody gives me some time. That certain little segment of time, 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever I know as a headlining comic who's built an act, and my act is an hour and a half, however long people need me to fill. I know that this 3 minutes is in service of a greater narrative, right? But it's my choice in the process of what I work on. Because if I go to an open mic as the guy who gets paid to do this, as the guy who makes a living being a comic, and my new jokes aren't funny, and I go up there for 3 minutes and it's just silence, then, does my ego kick in and go, oh man, the guy who's doing this for the second time did better than me. I better shoot, what does that say about me? Or does it just say, look, I had to get out there, I had to try these new things, and then recognizing when something's not ready, or recognizing, removing yourself from the process and going, okay, the audience didn't laugh, but why? It's not on them. It's not me saying like, oh, they were a bad audience. No, okay, why didn't I connect with them?
It's honing in on your product, what you're putting out there.
Right, and your ability to read instantly what your audience is. Like most companies and stuff, people that I work with in the coaching world, like they don't have the ability to sit there and roll something out and hear the instant reactions. Or every time somebody opens a Pepsi and goes, ah, right? They don't hear that. So they have to imagine that through the way that they approach their brand and the way that they approach their marketing and their advertising or whatever it is, right? So what do? A lot of them, in fact, most of the great most of the great speakers, most of the great TED Talks, most of the great memorable things that we connect with the nostalgia of growing up were because there was moments of humor. There were silly little things, right? We can still remember how having to avoid the Noid or the silly, Energizer Bunny. It's stupid, it's silly, but why do we connect with it? Because laughter is an emotional reaction, right? That's the job of a comic, is to stand on a stage in front of a group of people they can't see. A group of people that are not all the same demographic. There's young kids, there's old couples, there's married people, there's single people, people from every race, creed, color, religion, sexual orientation, and make all of them have an emotional reaction to the same thing on command.
Yeah.
That's my job.
That's got to be, I thought my job was tough being a DJ and trying to make everyone happy,
There's a lot of parallels,
But you do, right? What you do is, as standing up there, if you played your set despite your audience,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
You have to base it off of the demographic that's in front of you.
And the emotion and the energy that they're giving back to you, right?
Yeah. Oh, I feed off of it. It's
absolutely you do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just the same as a comic, right? Like I have to listen to them. If they're laughing long, let them laugh. If they're having fun with this, great. Let's stay here for a second. Let's listen to them, right? We kind of have to remove ourselves, and I think that's one of the coolest things that I've been able to kind of learn with working with these people that I've been working with is that you come to this realization that we are all multifaceted. So it's not about like me saying, I know what my act is. I know what kind of comic I am. I know what I'm bringing to the stage, and you guys are getting better. No, it's going, look, I'm confident in my skill set. I am over-prepared. If they're asking me to do an hour, I've got 2 in my head. If they're asking me to fill, whatever it is, I've got this. I can do this. I'm aware that this is something that I'm very good at. It's not ego to say that you're good at your skill set. It's ego to say you're the best, or it's ego to say, nobody's better than that. That's stupid. But to say, no, you put me on a stage with a mic in my hand, I'm going to do a good job.
Yeah.
Like, that's me knowing my skill set.
Well, that just comes with time served.
Well, yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, lots to unpack there. So one of the things that I'm really grateful to have discovered is that I'm not the only person that drinks a soda and goes this whole time.
Every time.
Yeah, I kind of keep it down low. But
I turn to the camera and do it. There's not even one there. I'll make sure the name's out and everything. I'm just like,
So, and then the other thing that you just sort of started to get into is this idea of sort of an imposter syndrome, where people have a really hard time just accepting the fact that maybe I'm good at something, or I should be allowed to be okay with that, and they're trying too hard to, justify themselves or not give themselves credit when they should be giving themselves a little bit of credit.
Right. Well,
so as a comic, I mean, come on, how do you do that? You guys are all supposed to be self-loathing. You're not supposed to be happy, generally speaking, I don't think.
Yeah, right.
So how do you ever get to that point? Is that some enlightenment that you've come across?
I think it's a myth, man. I think that the best comics in the world should be the ones that feel the most. Honestly, I can personally say that, if you ever been to an open mic, and you've got 30 dudes up there, most of which are trying this for the first time, it's usually really obvious who's there for the first time.
They usually start with, "This is my first time."
and then they follow that up with the worst, dirtiest things that you could hear. It's the same gross jokes, it's sex stuff, it's this stuff, it's whatever. Why? It's because they think, what's funny? I'm going to talk about that. Right? So I'm going to say a funny word. I'm going to do something that is inherently silly. And so that's like one of the things, I could say booger to a 3-year-old kid.
He's going to laugh.
I'm going to laugh.
I'm holding back the laugh. I kind of want to laugh.
But it doesn't make me a comic, right? Yeah. That's a reaction. The best comics, the best comedy, and you guys can probably think about this, right? The things that you can think back on from your childhood, the first time you remember something that made you laugh, Eddie Murphy Delirious for me.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw Eddie Murphy Delirious, I want some ice cream, I want some ice cream, and the goo-goo, all that. Like, I can remember all of that. And it does. It makes you laugh. Why is it that I haven't, you can go 20 years without watching that, but you can access that emotion? It's because you connected to it on a level that was personal. So for me, instead of thinking, what's funny, and talking about that, because ultimately, right, this is another great thing that I think a lot of business leaders and people in just about any industry don't think about, is you have to think and act like a headliner. So even when I only had 5 minutes, I had to, like I said, know that 5 minutes is ultimately going to be part of an hour. So I have to think like a headliner at all times and not limit myself to only focusing on 5 minutes and understanding what that 5 minutes means and where it fits. And then that ultimately gives you the ability to go, okay, if I'm going to be on stage for longer, then instead of just talking about BS, why don't I find the stuff I want to talk about and then find the funny in that? So it doesn't matter. And now that's what I've started doing, is like people will come to me and go, hey, I have to go up on stage and talk for an hour to insurance companies about me being the doctor for them to send claims to for shoulder and elbow surgeries. That's my specific thing. I got to fill an hour.
Okay, I got 5 minutes.
Right. How do I fill an hour? And then how do I have that emotional check-in, which laughter is that great emotional check-in where you let, your audience lets you know they're listening and that they're attached to your message. So being able to take the humor and find the humor in all of these different things is fascinating. And I don't think that it ever has to be like this self-loathing process. I think a lot of these young comics do that because I guess in order to start, you kind of have to be, you either have to have a very understanding wife, or you have to, because I mean, when I started, I was in a comedy club 6 days a week.
Right.
I was at Wise Guys. See, it was open every day but one when I started, and it doesn't matter if I was on the show, if I was part of the show, I was in the back, I was watching every comic, I was there in case somebody said, in fact, one of the first times I hosted at Wise Guys, out at the old West Valley Wise Guys, by where the Maverick Center, almost the East Center. I'm showing my age.
That's all right. I think we're pretty close in age, so I remember all that stuff.
But we were out there, and there was like 15 comics standing in the back. It was for Harlan Williams. It was a Harlan Williams show, and I was just a young new comic. And Keith Stubbs, the owner of Wise Guys and probably my greatest mentor, he he just walked past, like the music to come on, like that was starting the show back in the day. It was the Scat Man song. And
Is that the right one?
Yeah, and then it would come on, and you knew the show wasn't going to start.
Scat Man.
Yeah, that was it. And I still can't hear that without getting excited because I knew the show was starting. And he walks past this group of comics, like 15 of us, just standing in the back, and he just went, "Marcus, go host."
What?
And I just went, "Oh, okay." And he went back to the back and said, "Ladies and gentlemen," and I'm taking off my jacket, standing in the back going, "Okay, I need to fill 10 minutes. Okay, that joke and then that joke. And okay." And I just went up there going, I know that I have the capability to do at least what he's asking me to do. And I didn't think twice about it. And I just went up there and I did it. And it was funny. I ran into Harlan years later, and I had changed my look. I'd cut my hair because I had long hair back in the day. I had a beard back in the day, all this stuff. And he looked at me and went, "Hey, you're the guy, and you did that joke. And I remember that joke, and it led with the thing." And I went, like, that's amazing, right?
Yeah,
like, there was this incredible, like, you had to be ready. You have to live, like they say, as if, and kind of plan your life that way. And it's awesome. Like, I can't, every time I talk about comedy, I smile. There's no self-loathing about it.
Let's go back to, we kind of like, our show is called Eggs, and what we do is we go over someone's career from like start to current and kind of get the eggs of their career and kind of
sounds good.
Go that way. When did you get into it? Like what time frame was this? Like
Well, I mean, I've always been a performer. Like, I've done impressions since I was 8. I used to do every cartoon character, every Muppet. I would, if I was role playing or we were doing like some sort of like, you know, we're playing Indiana Jones, you're playing Star Wars, like I would try to do the voices and try to do the lines. And I would entertain my friends. When I got jobs, people were always like, "Hey, do the next, like do Walken, be Christopher Walken for the next customer." And they would push me to do these things, right? So, and then I was in a band for a while. So I knew, actually prior to that, hold on, let me go back. So I'd always done that. In 2000, I went to a school for professional wrestling.
What? Yeah. You're gonna have to talk slower.
I moved to San Antonio, Texas, and I got trained by a guy named Shawn Michaels, the Heart Rate Kid. And when he was retired, I went to his school, and I was one of only 2 people in my class that graduated. I'm very proud to say that. And I did professional wrestling for a while. Got really hurt. But I always liked the performance aspect of anything that I did. You know, trying to create something, a persona or something
alter
memorable.
Ego,
right?
Yeah.
And that was what was great with wrestling. And then a couple years later, I got in a band, and it was really fun to kind of create a mystique and a sound, and I worked with a band. But you know, as bands are, a lot of people you all kind of want to contribute. Not everybody thinks the same way. So eventually that broke up, and in doing the band, I'd met people in radio. And so when the band broke up, and being a frontman, I was always doing little bits in between songs, right? Like I would, again, do voices or whatever. That got me into radio, hanging out, doing an internship with Mick and Alan at K-Bear,
Nice.
and just hanging out for free for about a year and a half, just doing bits, you know, I would do George Bush, you know, so they would be like, you know, he was in office at the time, so it was real funny. I kind of call in and do him as a character, and I do like, you know, Family Guy, I do these calls in, and, you know, doing all these different characters, and it was a lot of fun. And so sometimes, like, there was a time when we were up at Sundance, and I did an entire interview with Matthew McConaughey, and I actually said, like, I was hoping to catch a Jazz game while I was in town. And the Jazz called the station, were like, "We have 2 seats waiting for him if he wants to come down." I was like, they were like, don't tell him. I was like, all right, man, we'll just keep that. We'll just keep that nice and simple. But I would do that around 10. And eventually, I started meeting comics that would come into the station every week to promote their shows. And I would do bits with them or whatever, just be present. And finally, a local guy, John Moyer. I don't know if you know John. He was the writer and director of Mobsters and Mormons, and he's a real good guy, genuine dude. And he said, "You need to come in and meet Keith. Come on, just come down this weekend. I'm headlining you. Come down and you meet him." And so he brought me in. He took me into Keith's office, and Keith went, "Oh yeah, you're the radio guy that does the voices. Do something." And I just went, "Okay," and I did some stuff. And he goes, "That's funny. Come back Sunday. I'll give you 2 minutes." And I said, "Cool." And I came back Sunday, and he put me up in front of a road dog. That's what we call people who were touring a lot back then, would just work the road. This guy named Nick Tyson, funny dude. He put me up for 2 minutes, and I told jokes that I had written, and people laughed. And I went, whoa,
this is cool.
It was that, they talk about that moment, right? And I went, ooh. what's this?
The goosebumps.
Yeah, exactly. I knew that I had to do that again. And I got off stage and Keith said, you know what, that was really good. If you come back Thursday, tell you what, I'll give you 3 more minutes. So I came back Thursday, and then he offered me Friday and Saturday. And then I was there as often as I could, and not only would they give me time, but they'd push me. Like, I remember the assistant manager, John, back in the day, he'd go, you know what, you can come back and do a set tomorrow, but it better be 5 new minutes. And
so you had to go home and work and think about it?
Or think about, not rest on your laurels, not just go, ooh, I know that joke works, tell it every time. It pushed me, right. And eventually within 4 months of the first time I stepped on a stage at Wise Guys, a comedy club stage, and granted I had done other things in the performance world and been a frontman in a band, so I understood the energy and controlling a crowd, but within 4 months of working my tail off, I headlined my very first night. He gave me a Sunday, and I sold that room out just by working and handing out flyers after every show that I opened on. And then forever after that, I was on every show he'd let me. To this day, even though I tour and headline, I still open for people that I want to work with. I still call them up and go, hey, I just did a weekend with Jeremy Piven, and that was awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
I just got to hang out and work with Jeremy and talk with him. My buddy Brian Posehn's coming in right after Thanksgiving, and me and him always work together, so we're just doing the show together. I love that. There is no, I'm a headliner now, so I'm there. No, I want to get up no matter where I'm at in the show, and if I'm going up before a dude, then my job is to make sure he has the best show he can, right? If I'm the headliner, then I'm the same other way.
Same thing in the DJ world,
right?
You get the guys that come in and they're playing from like 10 o'clock and they're playing peak hour sets, and that's not what you're doing. You're essentially there to sell liquor and get people ready for the prime time.
Exactly.
And they don't get that. They think, oh my God, I'm here, I'm playing in this big club, and I
better pull out all the stops, right?
Yeah, and it ruins it. It ruins the night for everyone.
Yep.
The venue, the DJ that's opening after you, the guy that's actually getting paid to headline and can do it better than you.
So
you know what I mean?
You know what? And that's such a relatable metaphor, because
Yeah.
I've been on shows or been to shows where I've seen an opener just, dude, you were up, we gave you 10 minutes, you did 20, and your last 10 you did.
And
it,
the red light was on for the last 8 minutes,
and it wasn't
Yeah.
good. Right? It wasn't like you were killing and we were like, okay, he's killing, let him keep going 20. It's like a lot of times it's that idea of like, okay, how much of the time that you're spending on stage or wherever you are is for you and how much is for the audience?
Yeah.
Because I've seen people who like the best of them, they know when that laugh hits, that's it, right? It's like a movie when you're watching it and you go, oh, that'd be a great end. Oh, there's more.
Let's keep going. Yep.
Oh, Frodo's gonna wake up and there's 7 minutes of slow motion Hobbit hugging. Okay.
Shit. Our next guest and next award winner goes out to a man who has become sort of a common name around here. We bring him up a lot, and in fact, this is part of why he won. A guy named Ryan Carson. Ryan is the CEO of a website called Team Treehouse, or I guess it's just called Treehouse, but the website is teamtreehouse.com. It's an online education platform for people learning programming. They do some business training and some design and creative training on there as well, but it's primarily coding.
Coding, yeah.
And programming. Ryan was one of the early CEOs on this show. We'd had a couple others by then, but he was one of the early guys who was willing to give us some time. Mike, if I remember right, had reached out to him through social media and basically just extended an invitation for people who followed the show.
Well, it was funny because I took a picture of, because I had been learning programming for a while, and I took a picture of something I was working on, and he randomly liked it. And my cousin was like, oh my gosh, Ryan liked your thing. And I was like, oh, now it's the obligatory, will you come on my show?
Yeah, obviously.
And he
word to the wise, don't like things on Mike's Instagram.
Don't like my stuff or you're coming on our show.
So anyway, but yeah, like as I was saying, Mike had been working on programming, and for anyone who's followed the show, you've heard him talking about that quite a bit. And so Ryan was a pretty impactful character in Mike's world at the moment. He was using, I'm a super pro. He was using that platform as a way to grow his knowledge about programming and coding. I too have used Treehouse for many years for different things along the way, and we're both kind of true believers in the platform. So we were really anxious and excited to meet with him.
The interview was amazing.
Yeah, interview was amazing. He called in from his office in Portland.
We actually had scheduled to try and meet with him in person because I was on the road and I was in Portland.
Yep.
And it just didn't work out with his schedule, so he was gracious enough to reschedule and actually just call in.
Yep.
So.
And but yeah, really cool talk. There were a lot of sort of key takeaways and life lessons and all kinds of interesting things in there. Again, this was sort of in that period of time post-layoff for me when I was really struggling to get my business back on its feet. And I was kind of grasping at straws. And so for me, a guy like Ryan who, at least seemingly has it all together, he's, a very disciplined guy who
gets up at 4:30 every morning,
4 in the morning,
works out, and makes coffee for his family. And just
really amazing. And, I think it was just a very impactful conversation for me, for Mike. And I mean, even in my own life, I took a number of things from this interview and implemented them and have been much happier because of them. So all that to say, this is a great interview. Ryan is also, which is kind of a fun fact, episode number 52, which means 52 weeks
mark.
And our happy anniversary. So 52 weeks prior, we had started the show. So that made Ryan sort of our anniversary guest, which is kind of a fun little fact. As I said, he's episode 52. We had him on in May of 2018. It aired May 10th. And the Eggy Award for the most impactful guest of 2018 is Ryan Carson, CEO at Team.
Boom.
After that first hurdle, that first job, no one cares about your degree.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives here in Salt Lake. He's a senior web developer, and he was saying, once you have that 2 years experience, the paper doesn't matter anymore.
None of it matters. It's just so crazy how we're funneling kids towards this expensive kind of learning vacation. Where you rack up $30,000 to $40,000 of debt. And you become sort of an indentured servant for the rest of your life. It just is, it's kind of weird. But it angers people when I say, don't go to college. And I decide not to fight that battle. It's like, okay, if you are determined to send your kids to college, or if you are determined to go to college, or if you went to college, that's okay. But what's going to happen is as soon as you start applying for jobs, it's going to be all about what you can do. It's going to be about your emotional intelligence, and it's going to be about stackable skills. So I think we're moving towards a model where a lot of folks are realizing that if they can create projects and build things, they can get into the door. And then after that, the college experience doesn't matter as much. And if you want that well-rounded kind of liberal arts side of education, which is really valuable, you can actually get it for free at Coursera, right? You can get a Harvard education for free at Coursera. So why not do that, but then pick up the trade skills that you need to do your job and get paid, at a school like Treehouse or something like that. So I think that's kind of where we're moving.
I'm happy to hear you say that because I kind of went down a similar path. I studied audio engineering at a community college in Seattle, and I enjoyed it, but I racked up $20,000 in debt, and I haven't found a job in the industry yet.
And that's the normal story. Like it's you and millions of other people. And I actually did the math on this. So I'm a nerdy kind of finance closet guy where my dad was a financial planner. So I love nerding out about retirement savings and stuff like that. So I thought I want to actually run the math on this and figure out what happens to somebody if they go the college route or they don't. And what happens to their total net worth throughout their life. And it's pretty basic. So say that you have Billy. Billy goes to college, accrues 30 to 40 grand of debt, and then he gets a job. And then you have, Tamikwa, who she gets a job straight out of high school. What happens to their net worth? Because Billy, the college grad, will start making more money right out of college, yes, but he also has 30 to 40 grand of debt. So
that he's going to have to
that
pay
he
off.
has to pay off. And so Billy is actually not going to save into his 401k because it's $300 to $400 is the typical monthly student debt repayment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enough money for almost all of us that you're going to not also save into a 401k, right?
Yeah.
It's just too much. It's like, gosh, I just need to pay down my student debt and then the rest I can survive on. So Billy is making more money when he starts, but he's not saving for retirement. And Tamiqua is making money right out of high school. Now she's making less money. She may be able to get a job that pays her $50,000 a year as a junior developer. But she is going to immediately start saving into her 401k. And she's also her salary is going to also start climbing. And so eventually Billy and Tamiqua will make the same salary, but she will have been earning for 4 years when he's going to college, and she would have been saving to her 401k from the beginning. And I'm assuming Billy is not going to pay into his 401k until he's about 40, because that's typically what happens. People don't pay off their student debt till they're 40. So the lifetime difference in how much money they will make is $2 million.
Wow.
So,
that's just the interest working for them instead of against them.
Right. It's so simple. Like this is math, based on real life. And yet we're telling all of our kids that you should get a degree because it's the way to be happy. And it's just not true anymore.
Yeah. The funny part for me is when I was in college, they would actually send me home and have me study online to,
Right.
It's like, to be honest with you, I didn't even get my degree. I didn't finish it. I'm like a few credits short. And the reason I didn't is because I figured out I could do it on my own. Why pay the bill?
It just doesn't make any sense. And I don't want anyone who's attached to, colleges, who works at colleges, they're all wonderful people. I mean, you have hardworking teachers.
Oh, yeah. Some of the people I met in college are going to be my best friends for life.
Right.
Like they're great connections that I'll have the rest of my life, which is awesome.
So they're...
but at the same time, you got to weigh it out. You got to determine if the education that you're getting is worth the expense, and it's
it's usually not.
This next guest is the cream of the crop. He's the maybe the top dog of the guests we've had on this year. For different reasons. A number of our guests have all been top dogs. Obviously, this list of 10 that we've been working through, as well as, the other 40 from this year, have all made a big impact in one way or another to this show. But this guy made, not only is he sort of part of some of the show milestones this year, but he really gave us an opportunity to work through some problems in our business, really gave us some perspective on even how to move forward with eggs as a business.
Well, he's actually, this episode is the highest play count.
Yep, and also the most downloaded episode of the year. He was a really exciting guest to get. Another part of our, our grand taking the show on the road. In fact, he was sort of the reason for it. So the guy we're talking about, of course, is Chris Do. Chris is founder of The Future and also CEO at a motion graphics company down in Santa Monica called Blind. They're well known for a lot of their work, including a video they did for Coldplay and the Gnarls Barkley Crazy video. Yep. They've been all over the place. A really, really exciting firm with really great work. And then more recently, his company, The Future, is one of the best content providers I know of for sharing creative education or education for creative people online. Melinda Livesey, that we had on or talked about earlier in the show, is sort of an alumni of Chris Do. We also were lucky enough this year to have people from his other company, The Future, Matt and Ben.
Cena,
Matt
Ben
and
Burns.
Cena and Ben Burns on the show. And they were amazing also. So really we just couldn't be more impressed with the stuff Chris has stacked up. Chris's award is basically best of show, and it's for a handful of handful of reasons. One that Mike alluded to is basically is the most downloaded episode of the show. Also, in this post-layoff world, Chris, for me personally, was very impactful in that he offered a lot of information, especially the segment of our show on chunking and breaking down your big goals into little bite-sized goals.
Well, he was actually like, they went and they filmed the interview while we recorded the audio, and they chopped up portions of the film and posted them on their YouTube channel, and some of them have like 14,000 plays.
Yeah, maybe more by now.
With
God, I
zero
haven't looked in a little while.
like
no thumbs downs.
No thumbs downs. All of them were good content. So it kind of it opened some doors for us.
Yeah, it was really great,
Yeah.
and it exposed us to a whole new audience, a bunch of creative people who are advocates of Christo, and there are a lot of them. 300 some plus thousand people on their YouTube channel. Not to mention people that follow him on other platforms and everything. And so not only were we thrilled to death to be able to sit down with him in his basically in his office down at Blind, but also to sort of be a part of content on the Future and all these other places where they spread the content around. It was really meaningful for this show and a really good opportunity for us. I think that if you go back and listen to Chris's show, I think it's maybe, chock full of some of the most actionable things that we talked about over the course of the year. Other people that we've talked about even in this list offered a lot of great advice on a lot of great subjects. But at least if you're in the creative field, entrepreneurial in any way.
Well, it wasn't even necessarily
creative.
We were talking about being an introvert and talking
I guess it's really anybody with a goal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got an egg, he really talked a lot about how to break it down and achieve it. And for me, that was really good information to hear at the right time. And so that made this show really important for me.
Yep. Well, and it's cool because you've actually implemented it and you've seen the results in your time.
It's true. And Chris, was very gracious with his time. He's a guy that's hard to get a hold of, and he's a busy character these days. Between Blind business, the Future business, his speaking, his et cetera, he's become a very well liked and desirable guy to have on podcasts and to speak at events. And so we were very grateful that he was willing to open up his time like that for us. Basically, we were only supposed to have about an hour with him. We went an hour and a half.
And then he took us to lunch.
And then he took us to lunch. And although I think I may have bought it. And or at least I remember getting out my card. I can't remember whether he fought me for it or not, but I'm pretty sure I paid for it. So he kind of took us to lunch.
He extended our question time.
But nonetheless, our hour and a half show was extended by almost 2 more hours because he sat with us at lunch and we got to work through some other ideas with him. That was time well spent and really important for both Mike and I, going through different stages of business and things like that. It was really great to be able to pick his brain, and he is just a bottomless pit of knowledge. A really interesting guy, great speaker, great presenter, and awesome to listen to. So without any further ado, the last award of the year, the biggest award of the year, the 2018 Eggy Award winner for Best of Show of 2018 goes to our friend and yours, Chris Beck.
I've had problems. And then what happens then? Now you're relatable, you're real, you're not holding anything back.
Well, one thing that we've kind of been very good about on this podcast is we're at least I try to be 100% legit. I've failed multiple times, and I see this as a way to kind of help people maybe not make the same mistakes that I made, and by being truthful about it and sharing my actual real life experiences, I feel like, by doing that, I'm hoping that I can help people and hope that they won't go through the same mistakes, and I don't know. I love this platform because I can do that.
Yeah.
And I can talk to people like you, and I can talk to people like Ryan Carson and these guys that have these amazing stories that just, I feel like they need to be shared. Mm-hmm. And it's great. So thank you again.
You're approaching that through the eyes of a person who's genuinely curious about people. If you can practice that in real life, it makes it much, much easier. So you don't have to wait for this format to be able to bring that part of you out.
Yeah.
And I've learned this from lots of people. So one of the things that I love to do is I like to watch people and I like to study them. I'm studying people all the time. So if somebody's doing something really well, I start to think like, how did they begin that conversation? What are they wearing? How what's their body language like? How are they leaning in or leaning out of the conversation? And I make notes all the time. And so I like to kind of steal whatever traits or habits or behavior, even if I don't understand the inner workings, and do that. Right?
Yeah.
So you want to be a great conversationalist. So you want to be able to spark a conversation with somebody. And if you're really approaching it like, I'm really curious about you, things happen. And my kids watch me all the time because I'm practicing, because this is not an easy thing to do. We're in Utah, and we're staying at this very nice hotel resort. And most of the people that work there, the wait staff, are like Eastern European. And there's a woman comes by and she speaks, and I hear a little accent. And so I ask her about it. It's like, where are you from? I hear a little bit of an accent. And she talks to me. Then she tells me she has a PhD in this and that. And I'm like, oh my God.
so
And you're
amazing.
working here?
Yeah.
Right? And she's like, yeah, because there's no job opportunities. There are none at home. And I asked her, like, are there a bunch of other people from your country? And like, yes. And this is how we do it. And they went on campus and interviewed. And I got to learn so much about her. So much so that my wife started getting concerned that she was going to get fired because she spent a lot of time talking to us.
Wow.
And she kept looking over her shoulder. And I said, if you have to go, please don't. I don't want you to get in trouble. And she goes, no, I just want to make sure that person's getting enough water. That's all I was doing. I'm not going to get in trouble for talking to you.
Huh.
So that's it. So if you see somebody in front of you in line or anywhere, practice the art of having a great conversation with people. Approach it from the point of view that I'm curious about you and just want to be a great listener. It'll make you doing this job much easier, and it'll build a new version of you.
I love that. That's awesome.
Well, and I think that's the moral of the story, right? Is continued education, evolution, becoming, bigger and better versions. Do you think, or I guess maybe this is a better way to say it, do you think that a lot of this has come to you with age, and part of it is just sort of experiencing life? Like, as you've gotten older, did you become a better goal setter and become more introspective and become more curious? And I mean, obviously you've evolved from one stage to another over the course of your career, but like, how much of it do you attribute just to being older and just hitting that amount of life experience? Like, is it relatable to a 26-year-old? Maybe part of this conversation.
I think it is. And I'm trying to be clear and objective about how to answer that question. But I remember when I was going to Art Center, most people were just studying design and stuff, and that's cool. But when I went into typography class, I wanted to learn from all the masters of typography. So one of the beautiful things about Art Center is this incredible library that they have. So of course my friends were out partying and doing whatever it is that they do. I was in the library until it closed. I was just literally walking from aisle to aisle, just pull one book down, and I memorized where all the books were. It's like, if you need to know something, I know where they are because I've looked at most of the books at this point in time. Mm-hmm. So that curiosity is like, I want to go deep because this is exciting to me. Or I would take classes that were outside of my major illustration classes, figure drawing, painting. I was terrible. I was stressed out in those classes because everybody was so good, but that's what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So I was learning how to use 3D programs when the technology wasn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing that I've noticed, when I went through high school, I didn't get good grades. I didn't apply myself. I wasn't interested in it. But when I went back to college for audio engineering, I got 4.0s. I mean, I did everything I want. I was taking extra classes. I was working with one-on-one with teachers. I'd pay extra to just get tutors and mentorships, and I learned everything I could. I just ate it up. But when I was going, taking an English class in high school, I was sleeping in the back and doing the bare minimum. With the future, we haven't even really talked about it that much other than the initial portion of it. That platform to me seems really cool because someone like me who might want to learn Illustrator or might want to learn typography can go and just take a class specifically on that and learn the fine details of that topic. And I think it's really neat that, like some of the other platforms out there, it's, X amount of dollars a month, but you have information overload. And I like how you split it up into categories. Like if you want to learn this, you want to learn business, you want to learn this, sign up for this class, pay this amount, and you have it. And I just want to applaud you on that. I think it's a really nice platform and a good approach.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And there are different business models, obviously, that appeal to different people. We're probably not as smart as some because if you build a subscription-based model, which is what Skillshare and a lot of these companies are, it's an all-you-can-eat kind of buffet.
Yeah.
But what happens is I've noticed myself psychologically because I paid one flat fee, and it's relatively low, I'm not that invested in learning the material.
Yeah.
Whereas if I stop subscribing, then I lose the material. So I just stay subscribed. So
it's
a good
$50
business
a
model,
month
right?
or
I
whatever,
get it.
and you
It's
just
super,
it's part
you
of
just
your expense.
Yeah. Whereas our model is like you buy it once, you keep it for life, and you only buy it because you want to learn that thing. And there's no real incentive for you to buy 35 classes and then not watch a single one.
Well, one thing that I've been studying recently is web development. And I was, on Lynda and a few other platforms out there. And I would go and I would want to take a class, but I wouldn't know what I needed to study. I didn't know what class I needed to learn first, what topic I wanted to, it was such a broad topic and such a big thing that I spent a lot of time learning stuff that I didn't really need to learn. And I think that had I come across some other things later, when I first started, I'd be a lot further along right now, just because I wouldn't be spinning my wheels learning something I didn't necessarily need to learn. And so that's kind of why I like your approach, is everything you need is right there. And unfortunately, I haven't signed up for one of your classes, so I don't know exactly how they work.
They're amazing.
But just looking over, your curriculum on your website, it looks really well done, and I do want to sign up for it. I'm not in the design aspect of things, so it doesn't really apply to me as much, but the business ones, I would love to.
Well, and so maybe this is a good point to segue and talk a little bit about the future. So we sort of alluded to earlier, and people who've listened to the show have heard me talk agency and stuff like that. And we talked about how maybe that landscape is changing a little bit from the traditional model where you've got 500 employees and these, $100 million accounts and all this stuff. And now maybe people are starting to focus in a little bit more or go after one expert in a field versus hiring an agency. I wondered two things. First, if you could talk about like being a generalist versus being a specialist. Do you become the world's best JavaScript guy versus a guy that can build, full stack? Or do you like the idea of being, I guess, more of a jack of all trades, in that world? And then second of all, where do you see sort of the business of design or agency culture going? Or what does it look like in the future? And then let's segue into how future is sort of the solution or the answer for all that.
Great. So each one of those things can warrant a pretty lengthy answer. So let me tackle them one at a time.
Sure.
So the first thing is, and then a lot of people want to know, should I specialize? Should I generalize? And what's the market want? And I think it's been pretty clear to me, people who specialize do better. It's easier to market. It's easier to build a reputation as being an expert. It's harder to replace you because you've become an expert and you can command higher dollars. But for creative people, the sound of like specializing seems like you're limiting a lot of things, and it suggests not going narrow but going deep. You want to go deep in specific subjects. So let's just say you've mastered typography or lettering or sound design and production. Let's just say that's what you've mastered. Then you can feel free to add other parts to it. But it's very important from a marketing point of view that you specialize. If you think about all the top companies out there that do a certain thing, you most likely pick a company that does that one thing really well and not a company that does 1,000 different things. Like, do you want to buy food products from a company that makes bleach? I'm not sure. Right? And that's Procter & Gamble, right? Those are those companies, and it's a house of brands. And so they have lots of little brands, but that's kind of how that works.
Yeah.
Now, but when it comes to your internal development, I think it's important for you to generalize a little bit, and it's okay. So externally specialize, and internally it's okay for you to be broad and study lots of different things. If I'm looking at myself, like I try to put it out there, I should be known for a certain thing, but internally I have many things that fascinate me. But unlike most people, I don't just kind of dabble in things. I go really, really deep. So when I got into mixed martial arts, I watched like every UFC. I watched every King of the Cage, every Pride. I studied this. I studied their stats. I would be on the blogs and read things until I said that was enough. And when I'm into fishing, I buy all the books, I read it, and I study and I watch the videos, the same thing. And I visit the tackle and supply shop. I'm reading the Field and Streams catalog. I'm just doing outdoor life, field, all that. That's what I'm doing until I'm done with that, and then I move on.
Yeah.
So what happens with a lot of people is they are marketing themselves as a generalist, which is dangerous. because there's a lot of competition for that. And when you
my
think
LinkedIn profile literally says I do a little bit of everything.
you may want to revisit that.
I know.
Right? But then it's like what people do is they dabble a little bit. That's the problem. Is they like, I want a little of this, a little of that. So when it comes to like, hey, I need to know a lot about SEO, it's like, I know just a little bit. And if you scratch the surface, that's the end of their knowing.
So for a guy like me who I have this brilliant idea, I've been spending 3 years learning how to build a website and finish this idea. Is it better for me to kind of save up and just pay someone to do it?
Probably.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, we just look at time is the most valuable resource that you have. If you spent 3 years so that you can save.
Well, how does someone who's broke, like literally paycheck to paycheck, barely getting by, go hire some dude to build a $50,000 website?
So we have to look at the equation, right?
Yeah.
So we can say like if you have to spend $50,000 and if it takes you 3 years to build a $50,000 product, and that's the best use of your time, then you've done it correctly. But if you said to yourself, like, what do I need to do to earn more than $50,000 in 3 years, then it's working against you at that point.
Yeah.
So your
See,
time,
I have
you
this
to kind of
constant battle of, do I go get a day job? Do I go drive truck for a few years so I can pay some web developer to do this for me? Or do I just keep doing what I'm doing and just eventually I'll get to the point where A, I built a career out of it, and B, because it's nice because what I'm learning right now is something that I can apply later on and maybe get a job with if the website doesn't take off. So I feel like I'm learning a valuable skill, but at the same time, I feel like I'm treading water. Like I'm not I feel like I'm making forward progress, but I don't feel like I'm getting there fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so foreign to me to be doing something like this that I honestly have no clue.
Right.
Well,
I have a very specific response because both of you guys have now talked about like little pet projects, things that you want to build. Here's the thing. I'm not sure the approach that you're taking is the best approach. And I'll tell you why. I think it's very important for you to prototype your idea. So it looks kind of like what you want, but it has no real functionality.
Yeah.
And then to go onto a place where you can crowdfund it and see if the market wants this thing. You should be prototyping and testing your ideas all the time. Test and validate your idea so that you're not building something that ultimately years later, like nobody wants, or you've missed the opportunity. Why is that important?
Yeah.
Because you can raise money. You can find out if people are genuinely interested in it. But perhaps the biggest benefit of it is they can contribute ideas to your thing in ways that you hadn't thought about. So they become your unpaid collaborator, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I'll make an analogy for some of you guys to think about, okay? And then I'll ground it in a real world example here. The analogy I was going to make is this, is that sometimes we watch films that have really convoluted plots that leave a lot of open holes or in the storyline itself. And then the internet on forums starts to answer all these things and come up with wonderful theories that I think exceed what the original creators did.
Yeah, because you're never going to get all the millions of people watching it the way that they think about it and their ideas.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think right now film is less of a conversation and more of a it's like just being talked to versus it being a dialogue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what if they made a film and it kind of kept it loose, showed a certain number of people, and then they went back and changed the film based on what it is that those people had in terms of ideas? Because here's the thing about collective intelligence, it's smarter than any one person.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how Pixar manages their stories. They use a lot of people to communicate what they're thinking about it to make one thing much, much better than if the sole writer director just had their own vision. So you give it some bones. So I think this is where you should probably be doing it like the way that Google does this. So Google decided a long time ago their whole method is this. And I talked to a design director at Google Labs. Is they said that if you look at a pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid are like analysts, scientists, engineers, accountants, executives, and they decide what it is that they want to make. And it starts to bubble towards the top. And the more it goes towards the top, it touches things that we can actually see. So then it gets into product design, UX design, graphic design, the packaging, the buttons and the menus and interfaces, all that kind of stuff. But most people just see at the top of the pyramid. We don't see the accountants, the engineers, the researchers, right?
The countless hours that it took.
All that kind of stuff. So what they do is they just build the pyramid, the top of the pyramid. They design it and they make it look and appear as if it's working to see if people can get excited. And then if people are excited, an engineer will go in and say, look, I know a technology that can achieve that in a much smaller form factor. And somebody else says, oh, I know how to do this. And I've done some research on this already. And actually it coalesces with what it is that you're doing, this is perfect. So they do it the opposite. They invert the pyramid. They start with what it looks like and how it's going to perform and function. And they don't care about the research and data, because if you can't get excited about that, that's not a product.
Well, and that's actually kind of where I'm at right now, is I have the front end pretty much laid out, and functionality is almost there, but like attaching it to a database and getting the actual everything working is where I'm struggling right now. And that's what I've been learning and what I've been studying. And I have a guy that I've been tutoring with. And, you know, I'm glad that you said that, because it's kind of, that's what I've been struggling with, is do I continue learning or do I get the product on the market? And I'm kind of leaning towards getting the product on the market. And now I just need to figure out how to do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. So
question 2.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So, I don't even remember where we left off, but so we were talking about,
specialization.
Yeah.
or general?
I think we covered, pretty well, specialization versus generalization. So now let's get into just quickly. I mean, you know, I realize a lot of people aren't going to give a damn about the future of the agency business, but it is a pretty drastic shift. And so I think it's interesting, at least to the creative people, to talk about how that business is changing. The sort of the traditional model, or the Mad Men model, with the huge agency and the hundreds of employees and all this stuff, that seems to be going away in exchange for people who are a little more focused, or smaller teams that handle one task, or sort of special forces groups that, maybe you guys can just kill this job for us, or we come to Blind for motion and we come to somebody else for something else, and versus hiring an agency and having a massive retainer and all that stuff.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about that as an agency owner, or as I don't know if you guys like to call your place an agency, but as sort of somebody in that line of work, how you've seen the landscape change and where you think it's going?
The first thing is, when we're talking about agency, most of, like, the way I think of it is advertising agency, right? So that's usually, and then where is that going? And I think it's been very clear. And when I speak to people who own ad agencies, they tell me advertising's dead.
Yeah.
Because there's lack of accountability, and it's not taking into consideration the changing habits of consumption. We're consuming content on a pool versus being pushed to us, right?
Yep.
So we're looking at things on our mobile phones, and when our lives are interrupted by something, we have great disdain for the company that brought us that disruption.
Every time.
Right? So we know that. I think Vaynerchuk says, Samsung, I hate you now because you keep doing this, and I will never buy another product from you because this is all you do, and we need to change that. So this is going to affect a lot of people, and a lot of money's at stake here, and they're all trying to figure it out. But the people who can deliver value to me, who can entertain me in genuine ways, will build brand affinity with me. So I think the thing about advertising is it needs to move into this place where it entertains and informs us, and that's all it's going to do. So, for example, we have a company that we're close to brokering a deal with. They make a software product that helps us, our people, to manage their projects. So rather than buy media and run a clever ad in the form of a 30-second commercial, what they want to do is hire us to teach people how to manage projects.
Yeah.
Manage projects. And by the way, you can use the software to achieve that. So it's very different. And so now they'll pay us to do that.
So it's a learning experience for them.
It's actually going to be a course.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. So the course is for us to teach you project management. We'd normally charge you, say, $50 or $100 for that course. So what this company is going to do is just to do it as a scholarship. We will pay for you to learn.
Huh.
See how the models flip and they're willing to
and they're
think
excited
about
it too.
Why not?
Yeah, because it's something they're applying to their business practice. And
well, think about it. Think about this mixer that you bought.
Yeah.
If what they charged you for was the learning thing, and they just shipped you the mixer for free, wouldn't that be fantastic?
It would be amazing. But at the same time, finding out how to use this mixer is hard. There's not a lot of. I'm going into forums on Facebook to figure out how to control a button. You know.
So whatever they spend on marketing, which is probably not a ton, whatever they spend on building a booth at a trade show, which is probably a decent amount of money, they should have spent in hiring somebody who's a really good person and entertaining, who knows how to talk about technology in ways that don't bore people, to teach you how to use this. And then
they've done a fairly decent job. I don't want to talk bad about Midas, but they've done a good job of getting a broad overview.
Yeah.
But getting the nitty gritty is hard. So,
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's our awards show for the very first one we've ever done. Thank you for sitting through it.
It's a wrap.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, this show is really, it was difficult to pick and difficult to prepare for. I mean, we had so many great people on the show this year that to whittle it down to these 10 almost doesn't seem fair. I mean,
well, and then picking the names of the actual awards, that was super hard.
Yeah, that was really difficult. In fact, you'll notice they're not that good. Like, we should probably have better award names next year.
Right.
But nonetheless, the people who have been so charitable with their time and everything, it means so much to Mike and I. And they've all been, all 40 some guests that we had in 2018, and all those that have appeared before that even, are massive parts of the success of this show. And in this time of year, around the holidays and stuff, it seems like extra pertinent or extra timely to sort of stop and give thanks to those people. And really everybody who listens. I mean, more than anything, the fans and the subscribers and the people who pass us along, and the occasional email we get and stuff from people who listen to the show, are really meaningful and go a long way in terms of, I guess, giving us the juice to keep this thing going.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's awesome when we, even just the likes on Instagram and the comments and the thumbs up and the fun stuff like that. It's kind of cool to see that people are actually listening, and we can actually see on our I can't say the word,
statistics.
That word. We can actually track and see where people are listening, and it's like there's people in India, there's people in the Philippines, there's people all over the world, and it's really actually quite humbling. So
yeah, no, it has been great, and watching the download counts going up and up and up, and the spread of the show. I think we're in something like 17 countries now, and all this stuff. I mean, just to see that happening, sort of the power of the internet is really pretty crazy, and awfully rewarding for me and Mike, who've been doing this for now 80 some episodes. I mean, it's a really, I don't know, I guess humbling experience, and really grateful for the opportunity to keep doing the show for you guys, and hopefully everybody will keep listening.
Yes.
And tell a friend. We need more. I mean, not that you guys aren't good enough, but it wouldn't be horrible if we got some more.
Yeah.
So anyway, again, this time of year makes me a little sentimental. So thanks again, everybody who listens to the show, everybody who participates in the show, even all our guests, friends, family, everybody who's been a part of it and kept this machine moving for the last 80 some weeks. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's it, right? I mean, just a big thanks and a big shout out. I hope everybody enjoyed the awards, and yeah. I don't know what else to say.
Looking
should
forward
probably
to
end
another
on some Christmas music or something, some little jingle.
No, I
bells
hate Christmas music, so
all right.
we'll do something else.
Yeah, all right. That makes sense to me.
Yep.
So to cap it off in traditional fashion, you can find me at ryanrogar.com, r2mg.com. You can find our dear pal and co-host, Mike, at
djontic.com. That's ONTIC.
And as always, you can follow the show, eggscast.com, and on all the socials at eggsshow. So join us, stick around. We've got a great year ahead of us in 2019. Big things are coming.
Pretty cool stuff coming.
Yep, great things coming. Look out early in the year for some big changes. And I can't wait to share them with you. It's going to be awesome. So here's to another year. I hope everybody had an awesome one. Here's to your success, your happiness, your everything. And we'll see y'all next time.
All right, I'll edit this tomorrow.